And City Manager Driscoll.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Roloffs Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Welcome, sir.
Our dear Father in heaven, we're grateful to Thee, the opportunity we have to live in this wonderful city and to have the freedoms and the enjoyments we have. We pray that Thou will continue to guide and direct our leaders of the city, that they'll be inspired to make good choices, they'll be blessed in their lives. And we pray that Thou will bless those who put their lives in harm for our safety and for our benefit, the police officers and the firefighters and the medical personnel, that they'll be blessed in their endeavors. We pray also for our military. We pray that Thou will bless and protect them and help them as they work so hard to secure our freedom. We pray that Thou will remember and bless the lives of those families that have been affected by war, that they'll be comforted and helped. We pray also for the rain that we've received, and we pray for more moisture in this area, that we can have all the reservoirs filled and we can have the water adequate for our needs. We pray at this time now for Thy Spirit to be here and for Thy direction and Thy continual watching eye over us. We do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for those kind words. Appreciate it. Men standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Kerrigan, would you lead us?
Yes, I will. Please join me.
Pledge of
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next I have comments from the public. I have one comment card. Anyone else want to speak under comments from the public? Mr. J. Edward Parker. Come on down, Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name is J. Edward Parker. I represent the American Radio Relay League. I'm the government representative for Sparks, Reno, and Washoe County. I come to you with a proclamation made by the governor of the state of Nevada. May I distribute this?
Sure. Here, if you want to give it to me, go ahead and speak, and we'll have the clerk hand it out for you.
Okay. Thank you. Governor Biden has declared the month of June Nevada Amateur Radio Month. I come to you now as a representative of the Amateur Radio Relay League and request that the council consider the possibility of either adopting or endorsing this proclamation at its next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I don't see a real problem with doing that. We'll get it on our next agenda and take care of it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Parker, for bringing this to our attention. I appreciate it. Anyone else under public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Anybody want to take anything out of order? Not looking for a motion. Mr. Schmidt?
I think we got something from the clerk down here.
Mr. Ratty? Ms. Ratty?
Second. I'm sorry, Mayor Martini?
Yes.
We need to move the one
Yeah, well,
item.
I'll take care of that as we come up.
Okay, thank you.
Been moved by Councilman Schmidt, seconded by Councilwoman Ratty to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay. 3.1, consideration of possible approval of minutes of the regular Sparks City Council meeting for May 12, 2014. Any omissions, corrections, deletions? Ms. Ratty. Mr. Lawson.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Lawson to approve the minutes of May 12th. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, 4.2 is a proclamation Nevada Wildlife Awareness Month. Is there someone here to accept this? Chief Koski, come on down. Well, I guess I misread that. Nevada Wildfire Awareness. Have a seat. I say wildlife. If I could read, it'd be a lot better, wouldn't it, Chief? Okay, we'll see how this goes. Proclamation, whereas wildfire significantly impacts Nevada's environmental, economic, and social well-being, and whereas residents of Nevada's fire-prone communities need to accept responsibility for living in high fire hazard areas, and whereas residents must encourage to move from the expectation of being protected from wildfire to the understanding that they must be prepared to survive wildfire, and whereas to do so, residents will need to acquire the knowledge and skills to prepare their homes to survive wildfire and take action. Now, therefore, I, Mayor of the City of Sparks, Gino R. Martini, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2014 as Nevada Wildfire Awareness Month, and this year's theme, Prepare Your Home for Wildfire, as a means for education and a call for residents of the City of Sparks to take action to reduce the wildfire threat to their homes and help their community move forward, becoming a fire-adapted community. Thank you. Good, yeah. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, City Council.
Yeah, just go ahead and press it. Yeah, there you go.
Andy Koski, for the record, Division Chief Fire Department. I'd like to thank you for recognizing this important topic. Wildfire does present a significant risk not only to our city, but our surrounding communities. And by all accounts, it looks like this is going to be a very long and potentially dangerous wildland fire season. That being said, we definitely do need the public's help in not only preventing wildfires, but preparing their homes against that wildfire threat, as well as knowing what to do when they're asked to evacuate. And I'd like to put in a plug for the UNR Cooperative Extension Living with Fire website. That's probably the best place for our citizens to go to gather that information. Again, thank you.
Thanks, Chief Koski. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to 4.2, Alliance for Innovation Academy and Award and recognition of the following employees. Who's doing this? Chris? You want me to read the employees, or you're going to do that?
We can do that following the presentation, if that's okay.
You do whatever you'd like.
So my presentation. This here. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Chris Severson, Employee and Customer Relations Manager. I'm here today to tell you a little bit of a story, and hopefully it is a good one, not a tragedy. Once upon a time, long ago, but not in too far away, there was a city named Sparks, and the citizens were happy, but a dark time descended, and the economy went to a very dark place. Luckily for the citizens, there was a group of people called employees who were dedicated to making the city sustainable, where revenues outpaced expenses, and the innovation team was formed. It all started with one simple goal: to expand innovation and capacity at the City of Sparks. It started in January of 2013 with the Project Innovation Team. The goal was true sustainability to ensure that revenues outpaced expenditures, ask key questions, engage all employees, and act swiftly and with purpose. Recognize that that only through change can we survive, and that innovation will become a core expectation of the organization. At that time, the team was formed, a cross-departmental, multi-level team, and over 113 projects were identified. Process mapping came about, and we had a lot of challenges, not in the least the methodologies to be used, the measurements, and the reporting criteria. Some of the projects that were identified and implemented quickly were things such as online bid process for a purchasing organization, electronic bill pay through our sewer payments, eliminating the necessity for paper checks, Parks and Recreation cost recovery programs and grant opportunities, plan submission process and business license application process to enable that process to be more smooth and to get through quickly. Parks Maintenance Substation at Golden Eagle Park. The IT password reset, enabling people to reset their own passwords. And HR billing processes within the Finance Department. But the loyal employees wanted more. And we undertook what was called a wildly important goal. We looked at a process called the 4 disciplines of execution, and it came across with a very simple idea, which was stop the whirlwind, which is the day that we live in, the day-to-day mess and the day-to-day projects, and to focus on one thing at a time. We tried that with the wellness program, and all departments focused on one thing with the goal of having 50% enrollment of employees in our wellness program in about a 3-month time period. I'm happy to say that we achieved that over 50%, and it showed us that when you have a small group of people dedicated that can build the momentum at the ground level, what can happen and what can be accomplished. The next step we looked at was what's called the IT WIG. And under Jeff Crunk's leadership, he pulled together a team that looked at all of the software, and I know that you've been reported on this, all of the hardware that the city has under its utilization, including cell phones and laptops and projectors and screens and everything, and to create a sustainability plan by 3/3 for council consideration, which again, although it was a big project, was completed on time, again, with a dedicated group of employees. The next step we felt was to try to mesh project innovations and the 4 disciplines of execution and to try to re-energize this function within the city. We came across a program, before I move on, we do have departments that are active and ongoing in innovations, and I shouldn't overlook them. Both our police and fire departments have labor management teams that are working really hard and are constantly looking through the innovation process. We started a new program called the Innovation Academy. This was done through the Alliance for Innovations, and we pulled together many of the people who are on the original Project Innovations team, and over a 6-month process, we partnered with 7 cities to learn about innovations and how to bring them alive within your organization, and it was a very dedicated group. We met weekly not quite weekly, but regularly with other cities in the Alliance and talked about what innovations mean and how to keep it going in your organization and to bring forward new ideas. The big idea for the city was to try to formalize the innovation process and to make sure that it's an ongoing process here at the city. And what we looked at was establishing a review board for big, innovative ideas. Many departments, and this was what we heard from a lot of the departments, is innovation is a part of their organization, and it's ongoing, and innovation is ingrained, and you should always look at how to do things better. But there are some projects that are just too big, or cross-departmental lines, or the money is too big, that really would require us to come together as a group and review those processes and those projects to bring them forward as an organization. And you'll see some of these process questions in front of you. Safety, legal implications, it impacts the city positively or negatively, philosophical questions, does it exceed the authority of one department or one group, and is it critical to our success? Plus, those things that are core to our mission and core values and goals, is it in the budget cycle, and why or why not should we do it? We were afraid that some things, because they may be too big or they may cross too many lines, are just not getting done, and we wanted to make sure that that came forward. We looked at a business as a process overview where we looked at ideas that were brought forward, whether we could implement them at the departmental level and move forward, or whether they needed to go to the board. Again, we built on existing departmental structures. The departments are continuing to meet regularly and ideas and process those that they can. And then we have a review board that, last but not least, we created an idea. This is a form that we've created for review board submission. And a lot of it asks us philosophical questions. Why or why not should we do this? And is it a big enough idea to take forward as an organization? So today, what I'd like to do is I would like to present the council with an award that the city was presented with for our participation in the Innovations Academy. Donna DiCarlo and I were fortunate enough to be present in Denver last month to receive the award on behalf of the city. So it's from the Innovations Academy. And then also to recognize those employees that took part in the academy themselves. So with that, I'll give you the certificates, and I'd also be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for Chris? Okay. So you want to have them come up one by one?
Yes, please.
Okay. So maybe I call up behind it. What do you think if I call up behind the council? Okay. Okay, come on up behind the council as I call your name, and then we'll take one big picture of all of you. Steve Driscoll? Neil Cruz? Tom Garrison, Chief? Tracy Dominguez? Chris Maples? It's probably working. Brian Miller? Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Jim Rundle? Come on down, Jimmy Rundle. Pass and switch. You're Arrington's best.
Arrington's finest.
Like I should run.
Price is right.
Congratulations. Mike Drinkwater? Cindy Bogan? Donna DiCarlo? Jill Valdez?
You're gonna need a wide angle lens.
Debbie Kinder?
We're doing the price of right.
Winner, chicken dinner.
Finish your flags.
Chris Severson? Can you give this to Chris Maples? Okay. So how you want to do this? Move in a little bit? Shorter in front, come on down. Go ahead, go
I
ahead.
can stand in front of you. It's just all the hair.
Can you get it without the chairs? Come on, council, get up here.
Enough rush.
You're gonna really need a wide angle.
Yeah, you're gonna need a wide angle.
All right, I get it, I get it.
They're the ones who did all the work.
You should hold up the plaque because it's beautiful.
That is a great plaque, isn't it? Good job, folks. We should invite us up here more often, James. Mr. Rundle.
Great job.
Warm and fuzzy day. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Moving on to 4.3, presentation of firefighter Kurt Wilson for being awarded the Northern Nevada American Red Cross Firefighter Hero Award. Chief Garrison.
Mayor Martini, members of the City Council, for the record, Tom Garrison, Fire Chief, and with me today is firefighter Kurt Wilson. I'm here today to present to you in recognition of firefighter Wilson's actions on a river rescue that he performed last year in the Truckee River. I think it's best for me to read the nomination that I sent to the American Red Cross in Kurt's behalf, and I think you'll get an accurate description that way of exactly what Kurt did. On the afternoon of July 1st, 2013, at approximately 3:44 p.m., the Sparks Fire Department was dispatched to the Truckee River at the McCarran Bridge for a possible drowning. Upon arrival, firefighters were advised by citizens that 2 males had been seen going underwater approximately a quarter mile west of the bridge. Once arriving at the location, firefighters encountered a man swimming in the river who stated he could see at least one person underwater through his snorkel mask. This victim was located in an area of the river where the currents had carved out a depression approximately 10 to 12 feet deep on the riverbed, and where the currents made it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for anyone to swim out of. Witnesses stated that the victims had only been underwater a short period of time, increasing their chances of survival if removed from the river quickly. Firefighter Kurt Wilson, an 8-year Sparks Fire Department veteran, a certified swiftwater rescue technician, and a former member of the department's water rescue team, was one of the first personnel on scene. Although Kurt had recently retired from the water rescue team due to a knee injury, he was confident that he could successfully perform the rescue. Kurt has a reputation of being a strong swimmer and demonstrated no hesitation to place himself in harm's way. It must be fully understood that even with the flotation device, rescuers would be placing themselves in the same hazardous position as the victims and possibly have the same difficulty swimming out of the depression. Firefighter Wilson, still in station pants and a T-shirt, removed his shoes, donned a personal flotation device and helmet, and carrying a rope bag, entered the river to begin rescue efforts. His plan was to dive underwater and loop the rope around the victim's wrist, allowing additional personnel on shore to pull the victim out of the depression. After several attempts, he realized that he would not be able to dive to the depth needed to reach the victims. To be able to dive deeper, he removed his flotation device and was finally able to reach the first victim, who was then pulled from the river. After the victim's arrival at shore, resuscitation efforts were immediately started by fire and REMSA personnel. By this time, 3 additional water rescue team members had arrived, and all were notified by the swimmer in the river that he could see another victim deeper in the depression. Each team member attempted several times to rescue the second victim, but were unsuccessful, mainly due to the depth of the victim and the strong river currents. Firefighter Wilson had made numerous attempts to reach both victims and was beginning to feel the fatigue caused from battling the strong currents. He made one last effort to reach the second victim and was finally able to reach the victim's wrist and loop the rope around it. In all, it was estimated that firefighter Wilson made at least 10 separate rescue attempts. Although both victims lost their lives in the accident, firefighter Wilson's actions were very heroic and provided the only possible chance of survival for the victims. He willingly placed himself in great risk in order to save the lives of others. He was successful in the rescue not only because he's a strong swimmer, but also due to his willingness to take great personal risk by diving deeper into the depression than anybody else. Firefighter Wilson was fully aware of the risk he was taking and did not hesitate. Because of his actions, firefighter Wilson was awarded the Fire Department's Medal of Valor and was also named this year's Northern Nevada American Red Cross Firefighter Real Hero. I believe it's important for the City Council not only to hear about the actions of their fire department and fire personnel, but also for Council to have the opportunity to publicly thank personnel for going above and beyond the call of duty. Please join me in applauding firefighter Wilson for his heroic actions.
Okay, let's move on to 4.4. Northern Nevada Medical Center nominated Lieutenant John Franz and Sergeant John Woodard for American Red Cross's 2014 Real Heroes Award. Who's presenting this? Come on up. For providing training, risk assessment to Northern Nevada Medical Center staff regarding active assailants. Welcome, Chief.
Mayor Martini, council members, Manager Driscoll, City Attorney Chet Adams, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Tom Miller, Operations Deputy Chief for the Sparks Police Department. I want to thank you for the opportunity to let you know about the efforts of our emergency responders, both on the fire side and the police side. And certainly congratulations to Firefighter Wilson. I'd like to introduce to you Lieutenant John Franz and Sergeant Jason Woodard of the Sparks Police Department. In late 2012, the Northern Nevada Medical Center recognized the need to prepare their staff for the possibility of encountering an armed confrontational subject. They contacted the Sparks Police Department for help. Sparks Police Department Lieutenant John Franz and Sergeant Jason Woodard began working with Northern Nevada Medical Center executive staff, developing training and doing risk assessments of their facility. Their first rapid deployment drill was conducted in January of 2013. Since that time, Lieutenant Franz and Sergeant Woodard have provided ongoing training for hospital staff and conducted additional drills. In March of this year, Lieutenant Franz and Sergeant Woodard, along with the Sparks Police Department Rapid Deployment Training Team, demonstrated a variety of scenarios for all Northern Nevada Medical Center staff. And then after that, they performed a full-scale active assailant scenario with an 8-man team, showing staff what the police response might look like. It was an eye-opener, to say the least, and was very well received. Chief Operating Officer Tiffany Meert said, "These two officers have gone above and beyond in helping us prepare." She was thrilled with the strong partnership formed between the Sparks Police Department and the Northern Nevada Medical Center. Northern Nevada Medical Center nominated Lieutenant Franz and Sergeant Woodard for the American Red Cross Real Heroes Award. They were honored at a luncheon back in April. In addition, I wanted to mention that these two experts are leading the effort regionally to develop a regional response plan to active assailant incidents, which unfortunately is a growingly common problem in our world today. So we would like to recognize Lieutenant Franz and Sergeant Woodard for their outstanding efforts and representation of the City of Sparks and the Sparks Police Department.
I'll just speak for a second. The circuit board speak for a second. We recognized many years ago the importance and the need for rapid deployment training at our department specifically. And back then we used to call it active shooter training because across the nation what we were seeing in the news was just that active shooters, folks entering movie theaters, schools, you name it, with firearms and causing mass havoc, basically. I mean, we've all seen the stories. Since then, nationally and internationally, it's not always firearms, it's edged weapons, it's other different weapons that are being used, and we recognize the need, not for just within our department, but to start training regionally and training independent businesses here locally on what to expect from us and how to better train their staff and what the staff should do, whether it's a movie theater, a construction company, Northern Nevada Medical Center, so folks had a better chance of surviving such an event were to occur. Obviously, we just had a couple of recent ones at Renown Medical in Reno, Sparks Middle School, and Jason and I, we have a vast background in teaching this, in tactics. We're both very long-term SWAT TAC officers, and we're also our lead department's firearms trainers. So we try to lead from example through what we're teaching our employees, but we're trying to broaden that as best as we can to help our city, our community. It doesn't matter if it's Northern Nevada Medical or if a company from Reno calls us, we'll be there at their doorstep to help out as well. Jason is our lead supervisor on the team. He is our team leader for our rapid deployment team, and I want to give Jason a minute to speak as well.
Thank you, Lieutenant France. I'd just like to say thank you to the city and the department, the chief, and the deputy chief for allowing us to not only partner with other police agencies, but also public entities and private entities here within the city to provide training. I know Lieutenant France feels the same way, but our belief is that if we can train any citizen within the city of Sparks and save at least one life when one of these incidents occurs, it's well worth the hours and the effort put into that training. I don't think that these, unfortunately, instances or occurrences are going away. Santa Barbara this weekend or Friday is a good example of that. I think that the best tool we have to effectively combat that is by training people within the city. We are currently working with the fire department to provide some additional training to them. We're in the process of writing a regional protocol with the other law enforcement and first responding entities here in the community. And last but not least, we're going to begin some training and assist the Department of Agriculture, whose building is in the city of Sparks, and some training will continue to train the public at their request. So I'd just like to thank everyone for not only recognizing us, but giving us the opportunity to work with the public and with the city to do so.
Thanks, gentlemen. We really appreciate it. On behalf of Northern Nevada Medical Center, I'm on the board of directors there, and I know they really appreciated this. The staff did. And it's a wonderful way to reach out to our businesses and so on and so forth, especially in an environment where they're at up there. I think that's much appreciated, and hopefully they won't ever have to use their knowledge that you gave them. But thanks for doing that. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. On to business after all the warm and fuzzy stuff. That was good. We love that stuff. Okay, let's move on to consent items. Anybody want to pull consent item 5.1 through 5.7? If not, looking for a motion. Ms. Ratty.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Have a second? Mr. Lawson? Second. Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Lawson to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Okay, general business. 6.1, consideration and possible approval of resolution number 3259, authorizing the execution and delivery of the first supplement indenture between the City of Sparks and U.S. Bank as trustee. Go ahead, I'll let you read the rest there, big boy.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. There's not much that's warm and fuzzy that comes out of the finance department. So here, this is kind of a technical issue that I bring before you today. But if you were on the council back in 2008, the city issued as part of the development for the Legends area, the city issued special assessment bonds that were applied to all the parcels out there in the Legends area. This is in relation to one particular parcel. If you recall, to make those bonds more creditable and more marketable and just to make them secure that the payment was going to be made on those bonds, the city entered into an original indenture agreement with the U.S. Bank, and part of that indenture required a secured letter of parcel to be obtained by the developer on the Olympia Gaming parcel. The idea was that letter of credit was going to be only released when the market value of that parcel, of that specific parcel of Olympia Gaming, was to reach a certain value, essentially 3-to-1 value over the amount of the letter of credit. So nothing's been built on that parcel, and you can imagine that value has never been reached. However, the developers expressed for quite a while their desire to, get out from under that letter of credit, but there was no way in the original indenture in order to do that. So they've worked out with the folks who own the Olympia parcel an opportunity to prepay their assessments. Again, which is fine. That's allowed in the original indenture. But the problem in the indenture was that it didn't allow for the release of the letter of credit unless the value hit. There was no mention of that release of the letter of credit due to a prepayment, which, is kind of silly, actually, because the only reason you have that letter of credit is to help secure the payment of those assessments. So what I have in front of you is what's called a supplemental indenture, which is essentially an amendment to the original indenture, and this is going to kind of correct that or cure that, I guess oversight is the best way I can put it. So we can allow for the trustee, i.e. U.S. Bank, to release that letter of credit upon receipt of the payment for of the special assessments. With that, I think I have, I'll just entertain questions, but that's the long and the short of it.
Questions, Mr. Schmidt?
Is that a one-time shot, or is that for the rest of the district, for the life of the district?
Well, it's only applicable to this one parcel.
Right.
There's only, one parcel that was required to have that kind of a letter of credit, if you will. So it would only apply to this, but the wording is such that it would apply to anybody, but that's not the case.
But I guess my question is, this letter of credit had to be redone year after year after year. So now the supplemental says it doesn't have to be redone, is that right?
Correct.
It basically goes away?
Correct. This would remove it. This would allow the trustee, when you release the letter of credit, then it's no more. So.
And then, is there any time in a district like this that you go back and you readjust values in the district? I know the district was settling up with that, that one particular piece of property taking a big burden of the improvement district. Is that ever go back and say, that never happened, so what do we have, 20-some years left of those bonds, that it's reallocated across the board?
No, the reassessments, I think if I understand your question, the reassessments would be done on a parcel-to-parcel level basis, especially if there's been redrawings, between the boundaries. However, this particular item is only addressing that one amount of assessed value. Actually, it was an appraised value. It's not the assessed value, but the appraised value had to reach a certain amount, and it's nowhere near that. So whether it got redrawn or not, it wouldn't have really mattered. However, the surefire way to get rid of any kind of encumbrance, if you will, which is what the letter of credit is to pay it off, and that's what they were trying to do.
Thank you.
Mr. Kerrigan.
So all parties agreed to this?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's what this is. Essentially, this is, upon approval, I guess I should say, this is the city council allowing the city to enter into the indenture, the supplemental indenture with the U.S. Bank in order to cure that oversight.
So explain it to me now. So the letter of credit goes away?
Yes.
And then, so who's taking the burden of that?
Well, it would be paid at that point, so there wouldn't be a burden.
So that it's paid off?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Reddy.
That's what I want to make sure that I understand. So the Olympia Gaming portion of the Special Improvement District will be paid off for the life of the district?
Yes.
And who's paying that?
Well, it's actually they've entered an agreement with the developers to pay that off. How they've done their financing, don't really know and don't really care.
But the bank has been paid?
As soon as the trustee receives the money for that, we'll consider that assessment paid off, and then they would be free upon approval of this resolution to release that letter of credit.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, looking for a motion. Mr. Schmidt.
I move to approve resolution number 3259, authorizing the execution and delivery of first supplemental indenture by between the City of Sparks and U.S. Bank trustee relating to City of Sparks Local Improvement District number 32008, limited obligation improvement bonds.
Do you have a second? Mr. Lawson. Second. Moved by Councilman Schmidt, seconded by Councilman Lawson to approve 6.1. Any further discussion? It will be resolution number 3259. Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. 6.2, consideration and possible approval of reimbursement to the City of Reno in the amount of $656,009.44 for Spark's share of a bid to award Janae Gassio, Inc. by the City of Reno for construction of the new septage receiving facility at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. For the record, Kim Labor, Maintenance Manager at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility. General business item 6.2 before you today is a request to approve reimbursement to the City of Reno for Spark's share of a contract awarded to Janae and Gassio to construct a new septage receiving facility at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility. The contract amount is $2,091,200 with Spark's share in amount not to exceed $656,009.44. The current facility was constructed in 1983 and has performed beyond its useful life. And at this moment, the facility has actually been transformed into a receiving area for Hidden Valley Ranch. That's some product that they use for cleaning out some of their tanks and so forth out at their facility. I have a drawing of, or a picture of the facility. This is Steamboat Creek, the Truckee River. This is the entranceway to Tum Wharf, and the new septage receiving will be up just south of the treatment facility up in this area. And I also have a engineering drawing showing the proposed facility. This would be the entranceway coming off of Clean Water Way. There would be a new building constructed here housing the new septage receiving, and we're also going to have a facility that will handle the vac trucks for both the City of Reno and the City of Sparks, and also the Vector trucks that come out and do work out at the treatment plant. This will be an exit back onto clean water. Another advantage of having this new facility, it will keep all the truck traffic out of the facility, which was kind of a safety issue with all the big trucks coming through the facility. The new facility will feature self-service, an enclosed building, and new updated odor control. By utilizing an enclosed building, the anticipated life of the facility is expected to exceed 30 years. This CIP project was approved by the Reno Sparks Joint Coordinating Committee as part of the ongoing capital improvements at Tum Wharf. And with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Kim? Mr. Kerrigan.
Kim, it says in addition the current septage facility has been reconfigured to offload the byproducts of Hidden Valley Ranch.
Correct.
Are they putting anything into this?
No, sir. We do collect money from Hidden Valley Ranch. It's a substantial amount every month from deliveries from Hidden Valley Ranch. This new facility will generally handle loads from like the septic tanks and from like the construction, Sani huts.
Okay.
Questions? Okay, looking for a motion. Mr. Lawson.
I move to approve that the council award the approval of the reimbursement of the City of Reno for Spark's share of the construction of a new septic receiving facility in the amount of $656,009.44.
Mr. Schmidt.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Lawson, seconded by Councilman Schmidt to approve 6.2 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
Are you on again?
I'm on again.
6.3, consideration and possible approval of reimbursement to the City of Reno in the amount of $93,670.82 for Spark's share of a contract awarded to Stantec Consulting Services. Go ahead, Kim.
Okay. Mayor, City Council members, once again, Kim Labor, Maintenance Manager at Tum Wharf. General business item 6.3 is a follow-up to general business item 6.2. 6.3 is a request to approve reimbursement to the City of Reno for Spark share of a contract awarded to Stantec Consulting Services to perform construction management of the new septic receiving facility at Tom Wharf. The contract amount is $298,000, with Spark share not to exceed $93,670.82. This contract will ensure that the project is completed per the plans and specifications. Some of the items Stantec will be responsible for are submittals, change orders, requests for information, as well as field inspections. This concludes my presentation. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Questions, Mr. Lawson?
Ready to make a motion?
Go ahead.
I move to approve that the council award the approval of the reimbursement to the City of Reno for Spark share of the construction of a new septic receiving facility in the amount of $93,670.82.
Mr. Schmidt? Second. Moved by Councilman Lawson, seconded by Councilman Schmidt to approve 6.3. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 6.4 is consideration and possible approval of a consulting agreement for construction management services for Stantec Consulting Services, Inc. for the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility, Amoresco project. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Michael Drinkwater, Treatment Plant Manager, Tom Wharf. You have before you today a request to enter an agreement to reimburse the City of Reno for a construction management contract in support of the Amoresco project. Council has previously acted favorably upon that project, approved $24 million or so in improvements at Tom Wharf, which will occur over the next 2 calendar years. In support of that, as we would with any capital improvement project, as you just did moments ago, we would ask for construction management in order to ensure that what you approved and what we envision actually gets constructed properly. As I said, what you have before you is a not-to-exceed amount. Because of the Amoresco, but the nature of the energy services project, it's a little bit more of a design build than we would normally bring before you. So there's a little bit of effort on the front end to make sure that the vision gets transformed into construction drawings and actually gets built. So we're looking to have a third-party owner's representative, in this case Stantec Engineering, to work with us to ensure that that happens properly and in a timely manner, to review all the typical construction drawings and schedules and submittals, and to ensure communication happens appropriately between all the parties involved. As I said, this contract before you, this proposal before you envisions an agreement for the entire 2-year construction period. It's a not-to-exceed amount, so if we find that it's not necessary to continue, that we don't need as much effort out of the consultant as we might have previously envisioned, we can dial them up or dial them down as we see fit. Typically, this body asked me, has this gone before the City of Reno? This was approved by the Reno Council Wednesday last, or at their last regular meeting, I apologize. So I would happily answer any questions.
Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Was this in the original proposal?
It has been contemplated from the beginning. It was not in the original proposal that we brought before you in March.
So then where's the $399,000 coming from?
That would originally be from the sanitary sewer fund, normal CIP funds.
So the return on investment is not what was presented to the council?
This would modestly affect the return on investment, yes, sir.
And one of my questions I had during the entire deliberation was that you had in the proposal that Amoresco was monitoring their own work. And I asked, how do you have 2 people and you have the one that you're paying doing monitoring all the own work? And it was very clear at that time that it was perfectly acceptable arrangement because Amoresco was good at what they do, and we didn't need to provide that kind of oversight on things. So I'm kind of taken aback that an entire project, $24 million project, and nothing was ever put in the budget to do construction oversight. That just shows me on where that whole project stood at. That it wasn't dialed in from the beginning. I think we're going to have 15 years of problems out of that project. But thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, looking for a motion. Mr. Lawson.
One more question. Good. In a Councilman Schmidt brings up a good point. Where's the $399 come from? Out of the budget?
Capital improvement budget.
But our share's only 125.
Yes, sir, and that's over 2 years, and that's a not to exceed amount.
Yeah.
All right.
Ms. Ratty?
I move to approve the performance contract for energy cost savings with Amoresco, Inc. for the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
Do I have a second? Mr. Kerrigan, second. I have a motion by Ms. Ratty, seconded by Mr. Kerrigan to approve 6.4. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, Mike. 6.5, consideration, discussion, and possible approval for the award of a contract for the 4th Street Sewer Rehabilitation Project, bid number 1314-019, to Reno Tahoe Construction, Inc. Go ahead, Brian.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. For the record, my name is Brian Kaysen, Acting Capital Projects Manager for the City of Sparks. I'm here today to present the 4th Street Sewer Rehabilitation Project for construction and possible approval to Reno Tahoe Construction. There were 3 bids submitted for the project, and Reno Tahoe Construction is the lowest responsive bidder, so staff is recommending Reno Tahoe Construction be awarded the project. The project's located, as you can see on this map, basically on 4th Street from Prater Way down to just south of F Street. And then it cuts across through a park, and then Lincoln Park Elementary School, and then terminates at Stanford. Essentially, it's going to be a lining project instead of removal and replacement. It's much less intrusive than removal and replacement, of course, going through a park and a school and an existing road, and the pipe itself still has substantial, basically, capacity for doing the lining. It's just the appropriate way of doing it. Anyhow, with that being the end of my presentation, I will answer any questions you may have.
Questions, Mr. Lawson?
Did everybody bid that? Same lining? There's there's a huge difference between number 1 and number 2.
Yeah, essentially, number 2 was from California, and number 3 was from Vegas, so both of them had substantially higher mobilization and demobilization costs. And then also RTC just got their subcontractor is cheaper on the actual lining.
Okay.
Mr. Kerrigan.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that if you look at the bid recap, I appreciate that we got down to a penny correction on one.
Yeah.
That was pretty good math on somebody's point, where we're talking in the $476,000 range.
Yeah, it might have made or break the project.
Mr. Lawson.
Good, if we want to make a motion.
Good.
I move to approve the award of the contract for the 4th Street Sewer Rehabilitation Project, bid number 1314-019, to Reno Tahoe Construction in the amount of $301,607.70.
Ms. Ratty.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Lawson, seconded by Councilwoman Ratty to approve 6.5 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving on to 6.6, consideration possible adoption of the final budget for the City of Sparks for fiscal year 2014-15. Mr. Karonk.
Good afternoon. For the record, Jeff Cronk, Financial Services Director. I have before you today the final budget document that we would file with the state of Nevada in the form that they require. This is built upon the direction received by council, especially at the presentation when we presented the city manager's budget recommendations in April. Received feedback along the way. This is also essentially the same document that was filed in the tentative budget and does include the property tax increase, the franchise fee increase, and an ending fund balance in the general fund of 6.4% of expenditures. With that, I just wanted to open it for questions I'll take. Otherwise, we're ready to file as is.
Questions, Mr. Kerrigan?
Yeah, I just want to clarify something. You know, in the newspaper article today, it said that it's been a decade since we raised property taxes. I've been on the city council for 15 years, and we've never raised it since I've been on here, so I just want to clarify that.
We did raise it it's heading into the fiscal 2005.
No, I think, didn't we switch it from paying off the bonds to just leaving it there?
No, it was an increase in the operating rate that ended up being the current rate that we've had since then. But that was the last time the operating rate portion was raised.
Is it a couple cents?
Yes, about a little bit less than.
Oh, okay. I must have voted no on that one then, so.
Yeah. Questions? Any other questions? Ms. Ratty?
It's not a public hearing.
Pardon me?
It's not a public hearing.
No.
So I move to adopt the final budget for the City of Sparks as presented today for fiscal year 2014-15.
Do you have a second? Mr. Lawson?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Ratty, second by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Lawson to approve the agenda item 6.6, final budget for City of Sparks for fiscal year 14-15. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Schmidt.
I just want to make sure, we talked about the property taxes, but that's not the only tax increases in this budget, correct?
Yes, it would be. The other is a franchise fee increase.
Yes.
It's not technically a tax, but yes, it is included.
Okay. Well, we'll send all the phone calls to you that we didn't raise taxes on the citizens. Okay, you can explain to us, it's not a tax increase.
Well, the property is.
It's just an extra funding revenue source for the City of Sparks. Thank you.
Please display. Passes 3-1. Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, 6.7, we're going to move, this is approval for a settlement, and before we can do the settlement, we have to adjourn to a closed-door session, so I'll move 6.7 to after 9.1, and we'll move on to our public hearing items. 7.1, consideration possible approval of the abandonment of an approximate 1,739 square foot parcel being a portion of Marietta Way as shown on a map to offer for dedication the extension of Marietta Drive, Freeport Boulevard, and Gregg Street to the City of Sparks. Mr. Martini, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm before you today with item 7.1, which is a request for an abandonment adjacent to 1705 Marietta Way. This is an outcome of a pre-application meeting we held with the property owner who's looking to expand his business and was running into some property line issues. So the council understands where it is. It's basically at the end of Marietta Way where it turns and becomes Coney Island Drive. To the north is Gregg Street. This is Marietta. The colored things down here are the business, the proposed expansion, and the area of right-of-way we wish to abandon. My 48-year-old eyes have a problem seeing that, so I did a blow-up. The big blue box is the existing building. This is where the applicant would like to expand. This area to the south, the Truckee River is down here. The floodplain comes across the southern extent of the parcel, so the applicant is limited in where he can build a new structure. As we work through the issues about the only place he can push his building out or add to it is to the east. As a possible solution, we looked at abandonment of right-of-way that we're currently not using. I checked with John Erickson, Transportation Manager. We have no need for this right-of-way in the future. It is a remnant, I believe, as you look through the maps for our industrial area, the right-of-ways were quite large once upon a time. My guess is that Marietta was slated to have a bridge over the river, potentially, and that Coney Island was going to extend to the east, and it just didn't build out that way. This area, the 1,739 square feet we're looking at abandoning is already fenced off and basically being used by the landowner now. Due to building code regulations, He can't come within a certain distance of property line. This abandonment will allow him a little bit of extra room to expand his business. Staff has reviewed the documents in your staff report. You see both the legal exhibits for this order of abandonment. Staff is recommending approval, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions for Mr. Martini? Okay, seeing none, this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. Anyone in the audience like to speak to this particular agenda item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for action. Any questions? If not, looking for a motion.
That's going to be Councilman Smith's.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Reddy.
I move to approve the vacation of a portion of Marietta Way as outlined by staff.
Do you have a second? Mr. Schmidt.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Schmidt to approve 7.1 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Moving on to 8.1, second reading, public hearing and possible discussion of Bill Number 2673, CA 4-14, an ordinance amending Title 20 of the Sparks Municipal Code to provide zoning authorization, Section 20.41.080, for the establishment of medical marijuana dispensaries and other matters properly related thereto. Ms. Melby, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Karen Melby, Senior Planner.
Armando Ornell, City Planner.
Before you today is an ordinance amending Title 20 of the Sparks Municipal Code to provide zoning authorization for the establishment of medical marijuana dispensaries and other matters related thereto. This code amendment adds a new section to Sparks Municipal Code under 2041, permits required for certain uses. The new section will be 2041-080, medical marijuana dispensary. The code amendment before you today are the regulations governing Title 20, our zoning code. The business licensing, Chapter 5, or Title 5, will be separate code amendment. The Division of Public and Behavioral Health of Nevada, Department of Health and Human Services, have adopted regulations for the operation of medical marijuana establishments, became effective on April 1, 2014. It is anticipated that the state will begin process to accept applications for registration certificates for medical marijuana establishments later this summer. The state will accept applications for all medical marijuana establishments during a 10-day period. There will be a notice issued 45 days prior to the opening of that 10-day period. The state law designates 10 dispensaries in Washoe County, of which 2 can be located in the city of Sparks. The code amendment proposes medical marijuana dispensaries to be allowed in zoning districts, general commercial C2, TOD, or transit-oriented development, mixed-use commercial, and within the industrial area only in areas of 3 intersections: McCarran and Glendale, McCarran and Gregg, and Glendale and Rock. Staff is proposing the medical marijuana dispensaries be reviewed by a major special use permit process because a special use permit will involve a minimum of 6 city departments in their review time, which this is much more than typically involved in a special use permit. There is a $10,000 deposit, and the staff will charge their time out at $120 an hour. The Planning Commission and staff is recommending that medical marijuana dispensaries be reviewed by special use permit because medical marijuana dispensaries is considered a retail outlet, and it will generate increased traffic and require public access and increase the number of people to the site. In contrast to other medical marijuana uses like cultivation, medical marijuana dispensaries will have a public coming to that location and will have a more significant impact to that area. It will be critical to review the location and the site on a case-by-case basis to address the individual physical characteristics of the site, such as the building situation on the site, driveway locations, loading and unloading areas, security of the building and site, business operation, and the safety of the customers and employees. It will be important to evaluate the dispensary use in a specific building since the building has not been designed for a medical marijuana dispensary or even possibly a retail use. The medical marijuana dispensaries could be located in potentially diverse locations throughout the city, making it important to have all city departments evaluate the proposed location. For example, recreational uses now require a special use permit in the industrial because the city needs to address the increased traffic and the potential conflict of the recreational use being adjacent to potentially hazardous or dangerous manufacturing operations. Another such use are churches, which generate large. They also require special use permits in any district except public facility. They generate traffic, parking issues, and potential of a large assembly of people. The public hearing and noticing is important to allow the neighboring uses to be aware of the proposed use. The public hearing of a special use permit allows the public vetting of concerns and potential impacts. The neighbors should have the opportunity to publicly voice their opinions on the location of a medical marijuana dispensary in their neighborhood. Depending on the timing of the state application of the 10-day period, the city may have review and approve the special use permits prior to the submittal time with the state, or the planning staff will issue a zoning verification letter informing the state that the proposed location would be suitable for a medical marijuana dispensary but will require a major special use permit. The city is not requiring that the applicant apply for a special use before they submit to the state. It is their choice if they want to go through the special use permit process before or after the review by the state. The city's proposed regulations require that the uses comply with the Nevada regulations, including the separation criteria. There are also standards for governing the operations of and including loading and unloading, refuge disposal, public safety plan, property access, and emission controls. The state separation of the requirements for medical marijuana establishments may not be located within 1,000 feet of a public or private school that provides formal education for preschool or kindergarten through 12th grade, and also must be located 300 feet from a community facilities, which include daycare, public parks, playground, public swimming pools, and a center or facility that with the primary purpose of providing recreational opportunities or services to children or adolescents. In the code amendment, staff is proposing to locate the medical marijuana dispensaries comply with these standards, and rather than stating that actually in our code. That way, if there are changes in the state regulations, we will not have to do a code amendment to comply with the state. The code amendment establishes the parking standards and also includes Table 2 of the Transit-Oriented Development Manual. This table will be updated to include the medical marijuana dispensaries in the TOD and mixed-use commercial district. If the medical marijuana dispensary loses its Nevada registration certificate, then the special use permit would be revoked by the city. The standards also provide that if the dispensary closes, the city's special use permit would be revoked. This differs from other entitlements in Chapter 20 in that the special use permit does not go with the property but applies to the applicant. Staff is recommending that on item I of under the medical marijuana section, that we remove the word standalone. It says the medical marijuana dispensary shall be located within, instead of a standalone building, we'd say a building complying with the regulations of the state. In this code amendment, Planning Commission and staff is proposing the separation from state-registered substance abuse treatment facilities of 1,000 feet. At the Planning Commission meeting on April 17th, there was testimony from the public on the distance of the radius from the 3 intersections in the industrial area. Staff was proposing 500 feet. During the public hearing, it was discussed to increase to 1,000. Planning Commission approved the 1,000 feet from the center of those 3 intersections, and that is represented in the draft code today. The testimony also concerned about the requirement of having medical marijuana dispensaries in the industrial area closing at 6 p.m. This restriction was imposed by the police department because of after 6 p.m. the industrial area is not populated, increasing the safety concerns for the customers and employees of the medical marijuana dispensaries. After discussion with the police department, the draft that's presented today has been changed to allow medical marijuana dispensaries in the industrial area to close at 7 p.m. Also, during public testimony at the Planning Commission, concerns were expressed about the limitation of 1,500 square feet of the public access area within the dispensaries. Planning Commission recommends increasing the public access area to 2,500 square feet. This change is also reflected in the draft code before you today. The standard was based on discussion with the municipalities in Arizona, which they actually restrict their square footage to 1,000 square feet. And staff felt that that was too restrictive. The intent of this requirement is to limit the number of people in the medical marijuana dispensaries at one time, which is a concern of the police department. Planning staff has worked as part of a citywide project team and has gotten input from the departments of the city to formulate these regulations. The police department is present today and prepared to discuss these issues or concerns relating to medical marijuana dispensaries. That concludes the presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Ron, did you have a question? Oh, I guess you were. Go ahead. No. Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Lawson?
Or we do have a public hearing on this first, or?
No, you can ask questions if you want, and then we'll have a public hearing.
If I have a dispensary that meets all the requirements, what am I going to deny them based on the special use permit?
The special use permit.
If they fit in the zone, they fit within all those requirements, and how do I deny them on the special use permit?
We don't, in actuality, I can't think of any time that we've ever denied a special use permit in the city of Sparks, but the reason that the special use permit provides an opportunity for the planning and the other departments within the city to review this specific site that the proposed, for in this example, dispensary would be located, so that we can address the specific issues relating to that specific project and put conditions of approval on that project.
Can't we do that with the administrative review we just passed?
If I, Councilman Lawson, Armando, or else, if I may. The special use permit process also allows for the public to be noticed of the use coming into that particular location. And, you know, there are many instances where, for example, we will amend the proposed conditions on the project or add conditions to the project based on the input we receive from the public. So that's, you know, yes, we can do what Karen outlined as staff through the administrative review process, but going out and noticing the surrounding property owners, having the public hearing allows us to then, again, add conditions, delete conditions, modify conditions based on the input of the neighbors of the project. So that's a, you know, that's a big
The neighbors
distinction.
can create additional conditions, is what you're saying.
Well, again, you know, those conditions, when they're added, typically are things that, you know, we because we don't, you know, we're not a neighbor, don't necessarily see or don't necessarily recognize as an issue. We don't simply add conditions because someone requests them. We typically will evaluate, you know, those requests or those concerns and make a determination as to whether an additional condition is warranted.
And we're only going to get 2 of these. That's the other thing I keep looking back, is there's only 2 that are going to go in the city of Sparks. So I don't see that as a turnover business. Once they're here, they're pretty much here. And I don't see where the neighbors and their influence on that, I mean, we should take all that into consideration, but if they found a spot, and think about all the misinformation that we've already heard just since January. So I can see the neighbors, you know, coming up with some type of misinformation or a misunderstanding of what the dispensary is or isn't, and making a decision on that.
Well, again, when we get concerns expressed by neighbors, when you know, if they ask for conditions, you know, we don't simply turn around and recommend to the Planning Commission that you know, that condition be added to those that have already been proposed. You know, your staff, as the professionals reviewing the application, will consider that input and make a determination as to whether to make that recommendation to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission and then also adds a layer of review, if you will, in terms of making a decision as to whether that additional condition is warranted or not. And then finally, the city council would be the appeal body, or you could call it up if you wanted to see it. But, I think it provides an opportunity when you have a use like a special use permit for a recreational use or for a church, where you really need to look at the particulars of that use in that location, and, it makes sense for the adjacent property owners to be notified. That's the staff recommendation. Now, it's obviously the city council's prerogative as to whether they want to require the special use permit or not, but, we're bringing that forward as the staff recommendation.
Thank you. I'm not in favor of this special use permit. I think if you meet the qualifications and you can go in there and you can live up to the standards we've set, to me, you're good to go.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. There's a lot of, it's going through the state and then through us again, where there's a lot of qualifications and things these people are going to be putting through the hoops as it is already. I think it's an unnecessary step, too. Questions, Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to bring up time for the public hearing, but since we're on the topic, I want to go ahead and continue the discussion. Tell me what we would get in the special use permit process that we would be different from the tremendous amount of regulations we have to get to that process in the first place. Tell me what kind of things could pop on up that would make that change.
There might be, again, without having, a specific site to discuss, it's a little difficult to speculate what those conditions might be. But it might be, something having to do with what the requirements are in terms of parking. It might have to do with, something coming to light that we're unaware of in terms of, community facility.
Parking, we have one space every 200 square foot. Would we demand more than that? Is that what you're saying? We would demand more than that?
We're looking at if it's going into like a center, we'd have to look at for an example, when we had the Northern Nevada junior volleyball team came in, and we did a public hearing, we actually had the neighbors come in and testify, and some issues came up in the general vicinity there that we didn't realize were issues in parking and the problems that were going on in that community, in that area there on Linda and Greg. We didn't realize there were, and so that's one example of where staff wasn't aware that there was a parking problem in that area. And by putting this recreational facility in there was creating more parking, and so we had to come back and come back with different solutions for addressing the parking in that area. And a lot of times without the public hearing, we would never have known that in that particular area there is a parking problem.
My concern is you had me until you made a comment, and the thing that really kind of set me off is that you stated, and it's true, a special use permit is designed for the project, for the site, and it goes along with the property no matter who the owners are. You've designed a special use permit that the variable is the occupant and not the property. And you've made it very clear that it expires when the owner expires or that business expires. It doesn't transfer with the property. So that means that the issue that I see that you want the special use permit is qualification of the owners and to be able to hold that, and has nothing to do with the property. So I think that you've kind of trying to use one set of laws to get another set of laws, and we've already established that the state's going to be responsible who they're going to allow to go ahead and use the permit. So you're actually using the permitting side of things, and you're pulling it around to the special use permit side so you can have the leverage over here and not in the permit side. And so I kind of take first off, I think you're illegal. That's up to city attorney. I think you're illegal to do something like that. But that's where you lost me on it, is that you can't have a special use permit in which you say it all has to do with the properties, and then when the owner changes, it's got to start all over again.
That's the state law, that the approvals they go with the applicant and not the business itself. And so we were proposing that if we go with a special use permit, right now all of our special use permits go with the land. So if there's a daycare with a special use permit and that owner gives up, the new owner can come into that special use permit now, as long as they comply with those conditions of approval. And what we're saying is so our code is consistent with state law, we are saying that it only goes with the applicant in this case.
So you're saying that the state wants to regulate our special use permit for
No,
zoning purposes?
no.
Well, that's what you said. You
No.
said state law.
The
What's
state law says that the registration certificate goes with the applicant.
Which is a business license application. It's where it's supposed to be.
Right.
Special use permits are a property item, not an owner item. You have the right in the building, in the permit process for the business permit to ask the kind of questions and things you're doing. We're talking about special use permit, what you designed for a piece of property goes with that piece of property. Nothing changes. But the moment that that owner leaves that business, you start the process all over again. That is in the business license, not in the special use permit process.
Well, Councilman Schmidt, and, I certainly don't want to belabor this point, but I think the intention with regard to having the special use permit run with the applicant as opposed to with the property, because of the provision in state law that says that, you have the restrictions in terms of the distance from a community facility or a school, that restriction applies at the time the applicant applies to the state. So because that medical marijuana establishment can no longer continue to exist at that location if they lose their state license, in our case, we felt that it was appropriate that the special use permit lapse at that time also, because when a new applicant comes in, they would have to apply to the state again, and we would once again have to look at the question of whether or not there is a community facility within 300 feet or a school within 1,000 feet. Now, if the city council prefers not to have that special use permit lapse and handle it through the business licensing process, then, again, that's certainly the city council's prerogative as well to address that specific provision.
And my point is, and I think you're missing it altogether, is that business license handles the individual. Correct? Who's going to go in there? That's going to be scrutinized from state levels, city level, everything. Correct? And my point is, you have a piece of property here that qualifies to do something, and if the next day somebody comes in and has already been all through all these other processes, that property's got to qualify all over again. Nothing changed except for the owner of the property. That would be saying every single business in the city of Sparks that once the owner sold the business, passed it on, did whatever, could no longer be operating in the facility they're in if you carry that citywide.
Well, again, and I'm not trying to argue the point. Our intent was to try to be as consistent as possible with state law. The state approval is not only for an applicant, but it's also for a specific location. If it's the city council's preference that we strike that provision that says that the special use permit lapses if the state revokes the business's license, then certainly we can look at doing that as well.
Thank you,
Mr. Kerry.
Clarify something for me. There's only 2 dispensaries allowed in Sparks. How many names are we going to get from the state? 100? Or are they going to only give us 2?
They will. Here's what was envisioned in terms of the steps. When the applicants will have the opportunity upon approval of zoning regulations to apply for a land use entitlement, whether it's an administrative review or a special use permit. They can choose to do that, or they can choose to simply ask for a zoning verification letter which says, your business can potentially go in this location. The zoning potentially allows it. That's their option as to whether they want to go through the process of applying to the city for a land use entitlement before or after they go through the state application process. I would presume that in terms of the state's review, that if you're further along in terms of your land use entitlements, you might be more competitive for one of those approvals. The state will then open their process. They will, in the case of dispensaries, if there's only 2 that are allowed in the city of Sparks, they will only award 2 provisional registrations initially. And then
Okay, and are they going to award location also?
Yes, they would be location-specific applications
Okay.
would be, receive, I think they're referred to as a provisional registration certificate.
Okay, so then getting back to the question about the special use permit, it looks like we're jumping through, we're going to make somebody jump through a lot of hoops. And I understand that.
They don't have to. They can wait. They can go through the state process, and then if they're awarded a provisional registration, then they can come and
Come
complete
back
the
and do
process.
it.
Yes.
Okay, but getting back to the special use permit, the only concern I have is that the public be aware. Now, if we leave it as an administrative review, do we notify people within 700 feet of the proposed facility?
We could certainly notify them. I think we would have a concern about doing that because there's no public hearing opportunity for the public then to address anybody. I mean, they could, in that event.
But if you send out and say we're having an administrative review on a location that's 700 feet from your property and it will end on whatever day, please get your comments in by then. Is that a problem doing that?
It would be comments.
I mean, if they have to go through the state and the state's going to come and give us two names, I don't see that, it's kind of redundant to me because we're not going to have a choice. The state's going to tell us who it is and where it is. Isn't that correct?
Well, but should we, for example, if they come back through the public hearing process, let's say it's a special use permit, and the state, let's say everybody chooses to wait. All of the applicants to the state choose to wait on their land use entitlement. If they then only, award two, those two come through. If for some reason, and it's within the realm of possibility. I mean, a special use permit can be appealed to the city council. An administrative review, a staff decision can be appealed to the city council. If for whatever reason the city council chose not to want a dispensary in a particular location, we could say no. Then the state would send to somebody else. Is the way I understand the process will work.
Okay.
So again, that was a recommendation. If the city council again doesn't want to subject dispensaries to the special use permit application process, we could bring back the administrative review.
Well, I'm only saying because we're always talking about being business friendly, and then we put all the caveats on things. So that, and I'm thinking if they have to go through the state and jump through that state hoop, that's not going to be easy. Okay, and if they okay a location in Sparks, why do we need to put a special use permit on it?
Well, again, for
if we put them, we've already, first of all, we were going to go with 500 feet and we went to 1,000, and why did we go to 1,000? Because somebody came in and said my property's 1,000 feet away and it'd be perfect for a dispensary. Is that not correct?
Specifically, we looked at what the difference.
Or not. I just asked a very pointed question. Isn't that not why the Planning Commission extended it? Because somebody came in and said, I have some property that's within 1,000 feet. Can we go to 1,000? Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so we just bent over for somebody. Because we were going to go for 500, but we were nice enough to say, okay, somebody came in and we were doing it specifically for somebody. Is that not correct?
Well, we didn't, if you will, acquiesce to that recommendation, making that recommendation to the Planning Commission without planning staff and police department staff going out and driving each of those intersections in the industrial area.
That's fine. I don't care what, but I'm just saying, we changed.
We did, yes.
Okay. And there was no problem with that.
But that wouldn't have come out unless we had a public hearing. I mean, that came out because of the result of having a public hearing.
Yeah, but we loosened the regulations for one individual.
Based
the
on
point I'm trying to
public
make
hearing.
is that we're bending over for everybody, but let's if that's the case, I'm just trying to make it business friendly. Is that business friendly by having a special use permit, or are we going to hang somebody up? Because I'm getting tired of listening to businesses come to me and say we're the hardest city in the trucking metals to work with, business-wise. I'm really getting tired of that, and I've been hearing it for 10 years now.
Well, again, that was the recommendation. The city council, as I've said a couple of times today, can choose to ask us to bring back instead the administrative review provisions that were approved last month, and we can amend those to provide for the dispensaries to go through that process.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out why staff is so adamant about a special use permit.
Well, again, I'm not. that was our view based on the fact that these are the retail locations for medical marijuana establishments, right? We have cultivation facilities, we have production facilities. Those do not involve bringing the public to the site.
Right, and the only concern I had was that the police department was going to buy off on the new locations, and they did. Okay, so I don't understand why we need a special use permit. The police department said, okay, we can go to 1,000 feet. We looked at all the locations, and it looks good to us. Is that not correct? I'm just trying to make it easy, all right? And how much time is a special use permit going to add on to all the...
I guess, Councilman Kerrigan, we didn't realize that there would be so much concern about requiring a special use permit in this particular instance. We require special use permits for, lots of uses and lots of different zoning districts. And so, in this case, it seemed like the appropriate thing to do based on...
No, I'm not. That's fine. I'm just saying that if you're going to argue for it, then give me a good reason to argue for it. But I'm just trying to say, are we business friendly? Is it business friendly?
Well, again, I based on the amount of interest we have in terms of potential applicants for dispensaries, there's a lot of interest there, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest, but they got to get through the state first, and they're only going to give us 2. Okay?
If I may, Councilman, when it goes through the state, they're not going to be looking at specifics about individual site and locations. And when we made the determination whether or not we could go from 500 to 1,000 feet, we looked at general parcels. We didn't go into the specific site security issues that may or may not be entitled into that. And we have to realize, yes, this is medical marijuana, but to 98% of the residents in Washoe County, this is still going to be an illegal substance. So we have to move forward cautiously when we're going into a new realm of business.
Well, according to the federal government, it's totally illegal, but that's another point.
But our voters voted, it got passed into law, and we're moving forward, and we will enforce those laws. We have to move forward cautiously, in my opinion, as your police chief.
So does the police department want a special use permit?
Initially, and I talked to Councilman yesterday when I was walking through his business, I said, I don't think we need it necessarily, but after hearing what Karen continued to say is, I remember sitting here in the audience, and there is a large box store located that's coming to a Star Bond district near us that has 37 conditions placed on it that came forward out of a public hearing process, because that's what our community wanted for that business. So it's not out of the realm that when a business goes into a location, especially a retail location, possibly in an industrial area that's outside that realm, that the members of the public have a voice, not to say whether they want it or not, because if the state says it's a good location and we say it's a good location, but what are their other concerns? Can we add additional lighting? Can we add additional security things? What can we do to help the community of Sparks, not a particular business, be successful?
Okay. Chief, I'm going to put you on the spot, because the reason I brought it up is because the last time I talked to the police department, you could care less about a special use permit. If you're saying the police department would prefer a special use permit, yes?
I changed my mind.
Okay, good. Then you just sold me then. That's all I need to hear. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Reddy.
Thanks, Brian. But I'm just going to reiterate a few things about, either you believe in public process or you don't believe in public process. And we have a tradition of having special use permits if it's a business that causes more impact than other businesses in the same location. So we're willing to ask a church to do it. We're willing to ask a volleyball league to do it. It seems a little bit out of our norms that we wouldn't ask a brand new emerging industry that as a state we're learning how to regulate. That I think it's not illogical to believe that a medical marijuana dispensary, particularly because there's only 2, so it's going to force business into only 2 locations as opposed to having it dispersed across the community, would have more significant impact than a Walgreens in the same spot. So I personally believe in public input, and what I know, and I was going to use the same example of the big box store in the Star Bonds district, is that those changes, those modest modifications that get made that wouldn't be part of an administrative review are very important to those neighbors. So those neighbors that got an 8-foot wall instead of a 6-foot wall, and now they don't have to look at it, it makes their quality of life better. And those are things that we can't know unless we have a public hearing. So I very strongly believe that for the dispensary part of the process that's going to have a significant impact on neighbors, that those neighbors should have an opportunity. My worst-case scenario is that we do noticing with no public hearing or no possibility for input, because then you've told everybody that they can, hey, this thing is coming, but you've given them no outlet to have their voice heard. And I think it's important that people have an opportunity to be heard. So I think this is critical. Whether or not it goes with the applicant or the location, to me, is a somewhat moot point. I don't feel as strongly about that because, frankly, if the applicant loses their state license, it's done anyway. So, and the neighbors have had their opportunity to have their say at that point. So I don't have a strong feeling about that one. But about special use permits, I just absolutely, and if we find after our first two that this just isn't as big of an issue as we thought it was, we can always go backwards. But as we all know, making something stricter later is far more difficult than making it easier on folks. So I'd rather start with erring on caution and back off later if we need to.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brian, you've opened up a whole bunch of items that I don't think anyone's is knowledgeable at this point. It's the question that I've asked from the very beginning. So what did our community say about this issue? We never brought that to the council, whether we wanted to do it or not. Staff just did it and brought it to us. You never come to us as a vote and say, how do we want to do it? We never got the department heads together and say, what do we do? My question that I've just asked the city manager, I'm going to look it up because I believe in 1995 when the citizens voted on it, the citizens of Sparks voted no on this issue. So if we want to know what the community wants, let's go back to the vote of what community wants.
Unfortunately, the state legislation did not consider that as an option, and they said that our jurisdiction would be allowed to. So that is something that's outside of our control, sir.
We don't have to do this. No. And that's what I kept asking for 6 months while this is going on. We do not have to do this as a city. We have cities all over the state of Nevada that have rejected not to do it.
Yes, some have opted out.
No, we already voted on that.
Yeah, I agree, but some cities have opted out.
Mr. Mayor.
We as a council made that decision.
I'm just going to say, I'll just go on the record saying I thought the city council already voted that we were going to go allow this.
Yes, that's true.
So we did have a vote. I know I'm getting old, but I think I remember that.
Mr. Driscoll.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, clarification, yes, this council did provide its staff direction to do this, and one of the primary drivers for it was the state made it very clear at the time that this was passed that it was going to happen, and that if a local jurisdiction didn't want to play, the state might opt to make them play, and they would just use the state rules. So when you gave direction to your council, it was to interpret the state law and the rules and regulations for the purposes of maintaining City of Sparks control over the process to the extent the state allowed us to do something different. We are very specifically controlled by what the state's doing. In their rules and regulations that were passed back in the end of March, they made it very clear that we cannot conflict with any of their rules. We can have some additional things that make some sense for our community. But for instance, they made it very clear we can't throw out their approved security plan that's part of the application process to have our own security plan required of these businesses. We can add some extra pieces. And so I think your staff has done a good job of understanding those regs, understanding your will at the time to be the control mechanism to do this for what you believe is best for your governance. Thank you.
Ms. Ratty.
I'm sorry, but I just have to comment on that. I appreciate that that's Mr. Driscoll's recollection, and I'm sure that that was, part of his reasoning for bringing it forward. But unless we're going to poll each council member and ask them why they voted yes in the first place, I voted yes because I believe there are people out there suffering real people with real issues who need access to a medication that is going to help them. And I'm not voting yes because I want to see us controlled. I'm voting yes because it's the right thing to do. So I'm not really certain how we got to revisionist history on the last step of the second hearing of the process of doing this, but we voted, all for our own reasons, to move forward on this, and I'd like to see us move forward.
Yeah, that's pretty evident. Okay, any more questions before we go to public hearing? Okay. This is a public hearing item, so I'll open it to the public. Anyone in the public like to speak to this particular item? If you're going to speak, come on up, give your name and so on and so forth for the record, and then fill out one of our speaking cards, or if you don't mind, fill out one of the speaking cards prior to speaking.
You want me to do that before I speak?
Just go ahead and give us your name and go ahead and speak your 3 minutes, and then you can fill it out. If the other ones are going to be here to speak, please fill out a card.
I don't know how that works. Does it magically turn on?
Hold on. So you guys are going to do this in tandem?
We are.
Okay.
I also have handouts. Should I hand those to you?
Yeah, give them to the clerk. She'll hand them out. Okay, so let's wait. Your picture's up. Let us. No.
No, it's good.
Okay.
We have enough time.
All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, you can have 3 minutes apiece if you would
great.
like.
Thank you.
Fill out separate cards. Okay, who's going to speak? Give me your name and for the record, and let's go.
I'll
3
speak
minutes.
first. Hi, I'm Doria Shoemaker for the record. Just to introduce myself, I am a co-owner of a natural health and wellness center of over 14 years in Washoe County. I'm a mom of 2 girls, and I'm here with a team that is looking to open up a dispensary at a location that we've already got for production, that we will be applying for production and cultivation. I have a map located up here, and it has to do with that distance from the center of an intersection. Currently, it's at 1,000 feet. To get to this facility, we would like to ask the council to consider expanding that to 1,500 feet, and there are a few reasons for that. One is, I believe, co-locating all 3 of these at the same location, and this site, particularly because of the safety already that the building does already hold. It creates a safer environment for the people of Sparks because you are not transporting product throughout the city. In addition, I imagine that since we plan and hope to cultivate and produce there, that we're already beyond the radar for the police department. So adding the extra facility of a dispensary there doesn't add extra patrol or another location that they will have to look at. I have one of my partners here, John Sutton, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the reasons for expanding that distance. And in addition, changing the wording on Part B of Section 2041-080, as it is readily visible from arterial upon which it is situated. And if that could be crossed out of the wording, that would also enable this spot to co-locate.
Okay. So you've done with your 3 minutes?
Yeah, I'm done with my 3 minutes.
Give him his fair 3 minutes, then we'll start over. Give us your name for the record, and we'll start your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Martini. My name is John Sutton. I am the managing member of HW Wellness, which is proposing to do business in Sparks. As Doria stated, we believe that a co-located facility is optimum from a security standpoint. I admit there's been a lot of findings during today's session that gave me a little pause in terms of asking for this concession. But the reality is, I think that if we're only getting 2 dispensaries in Sparks, it does behoove us to not have necessarily artificial radiuses established around 1,000 feet from a specific intersection. But let's actually get into the individual security features of the building itself. The building that we've acquired is the old Bank of America transfer building on South 21st at 895. It is a bunker. The fact is it offers some features that no other building in even Washoe County will be able to offer. We believe it creates an incredibly secure footprint for a co-located facility in terms of having cultivation, medical manufacturing, and a dispensary. We believe that ultimately it offers a discrete footprint. Instead of going to get medical marijuana next to a 7-Eleven or some other place that's deemed tenable, the fact is patients can come to this site secure. My son, by the way, is a medical marijuana card holder. He was the 3rd minor in the history of Nevada to get one. And I think it offers a great opportunity to be opaque in terms of the medicine you're receiving for an ailment that you have received a prescription for. Lastly, if Sparks is only getting 2 dispensaries across your footprint, I would think from a tax standpoint you would want to maximize the opportunity for tax revenue at this dispensary. The dispensary if enabled on South 21st, is closer to Reno. It's 2.1 miles from the airport. Keep in mind that Nevada uniquely enables reciprocation for cardholders outside of this state. There's an opportunity for it to be a fantastic footprint, both from a security standpoint, from a discrete standpoint, and ultimately from a tax revenue standpoint for Sparks, better than I think any other facility that I've currently either toured or heard of. We've invested a lot of additional money in security, and the fact is I would love for the police to come to the facility and to really assess this as a viable footprint for a dispensary, maybe outside the box by, I think, a little over 400 feet. But I am asking for some flexibility, though I appreciate the statements that I've heard to date in this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think first Mr. Schmidt had a question. I'm sorry, I did not recognize it. I'm sorry.
I'm just asking for the data that 1,500 is better than 1,000.
1,000 would fall just about right there.
But what's the data that says 1,500 is the magic number?
Well, do you mind if I answer that?
Because it's building it.
Yeah, it is. I'm asking for a concession. It's not based on a demographic analysis. It's saying if I stay within 1,000 feet, you're not going to have a building with the attributes that what I'm bringing at 1,450. I would ask for a little more flexibility since we're getting 2 licenses to look at not only the ownership, but the building itself as it relates to longevity in that footprint. I believe it merits a peak in terms of expanding that to 1,500 square feet.
So
1,500 feet.
if someone comes up after you and says their building's at 3,000 square foot, should we take that into consideration?
Well, it would be hypocritical to now say no. What I will state is if we could actually go and look at that building, and we are into a process tomorrow to be here with Sparks to talk about the attributes of that building, I would say let's look at those 2 buildings.
So then a mile would be appropriate, that if the building is acceptable, a mile is appropriate. The building is what is the driving force of what we need to do, not the 1,000 feet and not the 1,500 square feet. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think that when you're at the cusp, we're within, back in the day I could have thrown a football almost 100 yards. So what I'll state is we're within a stone's throw of the 1,000 square feet, and I think the security attributes of the building merit at least consideration.
So we really shouldn't have a law at all. We should just say anywhere that it wants to go to should be okay.
No, I think you should have a law. And in fact, one of the reasons why we have enjoyed working with Sparks is how meticulous and diligent the groups have been in terms of establishing the ordinances that they're proposing to date. But on the other hand, within reason, I think it merits taking a look at this dispensary location and determining, has this group covered security requirements above and beyond what would be necessary? I'm concerned about the budget that the police officers have. I'm willing to cover that on my side of the expense for you to consider that location within a stone's throw of the 1,000-foot radius.
And the reason why we should do this is because there's an economic boom in taxes, right? So one of the 3 items you gave is the reason why we should do this. Is
Sure, I think that
economic boom to the city.
Sure. I mean, I gave you 3. One was discrete patient accessibility to a site that's not necessarily a typical retail footprint. Secondly, yes, I think the proximity to Reno here is advantageous. This is right off of the highway. It's right off of Mill. The fact is it's near the airport. There's several methods calibrated that would say this would be a great dispensary location if the driver here is providing additional tax revenue to Sparks.
So if we had no dispensaries in the city of Sparks, would the city of Sparks still partake in the sales taxes for the rest of the county?
So if you had, and just to make sure, because I'm not a tax attorney, but I'm going to recapitulate the question to make sure we are in alignment. What I'm hearing is you're asking, if there are no dispensaries in Sparks, does Sparks benefit from the tax revenue?
Correct.
For Washoe County?
Correct.
I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head. I can research that for you if you'd like.
It's a flat rate. It doesn't matter where it's generated in the county. We get the same amount. So all the taxes could be right across the board in the city of Reno and the same amount here. All sales could be in the city of Sparks. There's no boom to us. It's the same.
Okay, I don't necessarily disagree, but, it's got to stop somewhere. I mean, I understand on Mr. Schmidt's side, we can go to a mile or 2 miles or 6 miles. On the other hand, I disagree with you. The building you're talking about is probably perfect. Been in the building, it's very secure. It's a Valley Bank vault used to be, where they did all their changing of money and all that kind of stuff. So I agree on that side of it. It's a perfect building, but have to stop somewhere, and I don't know how far more we want to go. So having said that, Mr. Ratty has a question.
So I actually do have a question. I think the relevant question is there a location that makes sense, or is it all about the building? And so if you can answer this question for me, I think it will help me to get to, is it all about the building, or is it really a location? And so the question is, I think where the concern comes from is actually not what happens in the building. All of the buildings have to be particularly secured. It's a great building. The question is actually what happens outside the building. So you're talking about a cash-based business where people are going in with significant amounts of cash and they're leaving with something that others less scrupulous might desire. And so I think part of the reason that we are looking at trying to narrow it down into main corridors where there's a more significant police presence is the opportunity for crime that happens once they're en route to your property and leaving your property. So what in your security plan addresses that portion of it?
No, I'll try to answer that. And by the way, I'm not equivocating because I don't have an answer.
I'm not suggesting I really want an answer to that question.
And I'll answer the question directly. The reason I'm equivocating is because I've hired Martin Ross Security, 2 agents of which are here, who are basically architecting our entire security plan meticulously as it relates to all aspects of security, inside, outside, transport, et cetera. And for me to answer where they have core competency is weaker than if they came up and answered that question directly themselves. First, highest level, I hope that there has been, and I'm sure there has, working with great folk like Karen, there's been some research to find that crime in the area of a medical marijuana establishment in states where they are taking and doing primary research is coming down around these facilities for various reasons, one of which, of course, is because we're paying for security itself. People are less likely to attack a bunker than they are a house made of corrugated steel. So the reality is crime, I believe, will come down in the area where we establish this facility. But as it relates to the question, is it the building, is it all the building? I work with the state to stand up the code in this case, and the fact is, to a great extent, it is about the building. We are basically working to establish, as you stated earlier, a brand-new industry in this state, and security needs to be paramount. So I believe that a building tantamount to a bunker, as that building is an excellent choice for the city of Sparks to make in terms of that is a fantastic building. It'll keep people safe, it'll keep products safe, it mitigates the cash risk, and ultimately it'll keep patients safe. So I do think it is, to an extent, at least at this inflection point, it is about the building to a great extent.
Can I answer to your question? Is mine on? Oh, there we go. I'd like to add to that. It is about the building, but it also opens up the vicinity of other people to have that same opportunity to go out and possibly put up a dispensary as well, too. So it's not just closing it. I mean, when you expand it to 1,500 feet, you're opening up the vicinity for other opportunities for people.
Mr. Kennedy.
Armando, if we use a special use permit, can we not waive the 300 feet that they are outside the area with a special use permit?
Not through the special use permit process itself, no.
What process would we have to use?
Well, I'm trying to think as to whether there's any process that you would be able to use.
With a minor deviation?
Yeah, I thought we could have a minor deviation on a special use permit, or a major.
There is a provision.
For major deviation.
Do you want to use mine?
There is a provision in the code that says we won't do deviations for these particular uses. The concern we would have, certainly with regard to expanding it to 1,500 feet, is that you take, as was noted, you take not only in their particular building, but you start to take in a bunch of additional buildings.
Yeah, and see, I knew we were going to run into problems when we expanded it from 500 to 1,000 because of somebody.
Yep.
And now we're looking at going from 1,000 to 1,500 for somebody. That's the point I'm trying to make. But I wouldn't have a problem, if we could do it legally, looking at, saying, okay, this is a bunker, and maybe it is a good place for it. If we could, through the special use permit process, say, yes, we could go another 200 feet. So.
Well, and as was noted, in this case, they're looking for not only a change in terms of the distance, but also in terms of another criterion, which is that it's visible from a major arterial. And
well, then that may disqualify. Plus, the fact is they haven't got a license anyway. They're betting on the come. They're going to get through the state process. So that that's the other point I have. But I'm thinking that if they did, in fact, do that, then maybe there is a way to do it through the special use permit process. But
I would defer to the police department in terms of addressing that requirement of visibility.
Well, right. But I was going to say the police department, if you do the special use permit process and the police department comes in and says it's a lousy location, then we're done. But if they say it's a fantastic location, I wouldn't have a problem with saying, okay, then we'll waive 200 feet or whatever it is.
Can I add? I'd like to say that by extending it to 1,500 feet, the City of Sparks is keeping their options open for what the state may bring back to them. You want the best case scenario. And if you're limiting certain areas that fall outside the 1,000 feet and visible from an arterial, then you're limiting the capability of getting the best possible location for this use.
Okay, I'm going to have to cut you two off. You've had plenty of time. And
Thank you very
So, you betcha. Who's next? I don't have a card, so
We got
just come on up and give your name for the record.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Rebecca Gasca. I'm a Sparks resident, and I'm here on behalf of my clients. My firm is Pistol and Stigma, and we're working with clients who'd like to own and operate MMEs within the City of Sparks. And I really want to thank staff for the massive amount of work that they've put into this. When I first sat down with staff, I sat down with them as a resident of Sparks, not because I was representing anybody, because indeed at the time I was not, and I disclosed that to them. And so I care from a very innate, personal perspective. I live here in downtown Sparks. And so as a Sparks resident, I really appreciate the work that staff has done, and of course council, the consideration that you've taken. I'd like to iterate our support of the expansion to 2,500 square feet for the dispensaries themselves, and really appreciate the elimination of the staff recommendation of the elimination of the word standalone in I, subsection I. And there are a couple of issues that I'd just like to bring to your attention as a result of the discussion that's happened here today. And one of the most important things is that if you move forward with a special use permit and you leave it open-ended as to whether or not they must apply or can apply before the state opens its application process or after, not only will there be an incredible duplication of staff time and resources that may be totally unnecessary because those applicants might not even get through the state process, but it also calls into question the preambulatory clause of 2041.080, which says that the city's intent is to maintain sufficient distance between dispensaries to facilitate access for patients. I will note that the application, while it's not public at this point, and we don't anticipate it to become public until probably sometime within the next month, the state actually will be taking into consideration much more than the distance or separation between locations, but also, of course, it's access to bus routes and, major thoroughfares, things of that nature, in addition to things like security plans or details relating to cash basis of transactions and a whole host of other issues. Following that, it notes that if the city should receive multiple applications for dispensaries, it will take into account the respective locations of the proposed facilities without defining what will be taken into account. There's no definition here, and so I think the way that this is worded, coupled with the idea that people may or may not come before the state application process, really puts an additional load on staff time. It really kind of inhibits the process from a business perspective. And I think from a city perspective, what you're really going to want to do is make sure that those people who care enough to operate businesses within the city of Sparks are really concentrating their time on perfecting their application according to the state requirements so that they are one of the top two. If post facto you want to apply a special use permit once the entity has actually received its department, temporary registration, then that's something else entirely. But leaving it completely open-ended, I think, really would prove to be problematic. Finally, I'll note that can I have 20 seconds?
Quickly.
Thank you.
Sure.
L has a limitation on loading and unloading of medical marijuana or items associated with operations, and only allows that to occur between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. If your intent was to prohibit that from happening outside so that the public isn't seeing those kind of transactions happening, then you should make sure that that's actually clear, because for co-located facilities, you could actually be doing the operations on the inside, and I would hate to see the city limit the time frame in which a business should reasonably be able to prepare their loading and unloading. And also, I think that the limitation till 6 p.m. is a little constrictive, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else? Todd? Todd Vinger, come on up. Anyone else?
I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad sign that you know my name. But for the record, Todd Vinger, resident of Sparks and CEO of Forever Green, Nevada. And I would just like to take a few seconds just to thank your staff. I think they've done a great job. I think they've put a lot of effort, a lot of thought in creating a reasonable areas to place these facilities. And a lot of thought went into that. And I just do want to warn as to slippery slope. I got into this because I want to make sure it's done by the book, by the law, and you set that law here, and I ask that you set the law as a reasonable law, and just be careful of the slippery slope. And we don't know where we'll end up if we keep going down that path. But with that, I just want to thank staff. I think pretty much everything they've come up with has been very reasonable, and I think it should stand. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. Anyone else like to speak under public comment? Come on down, sir.
Thank you. Good day.
Are you together?
Yes, we are.
So 3 minutes apiece?
3 minutes apiece.
Okay, go ahead. Just give us your name for the record, and then make sure you fill out a card.
You got it. My name is Jason Patterson. I'm president of Martin Ross and Associates, Martin Ross Security and Investigations. And this is my cohort, Terrell Farad, and he is my director of operations. I wanted to, what has been discussed, and I also would like to thank staff. They obviously have put a lot of time and energy into this, as all of you have as well. We have also put in an enormous amount of time in looking at the inherent risks, trying to manage and mitigate those risks, and have gone so far as to actually go to Denver. And I personally toured 5 different dispensaries as well as cultivation facilities. I got to see very in-depth how they do it, what safeguards are in effect there, and the problems that they're having, which are far and few between, I might add. And this is coming from a security person. It's my job. I eat, drink, and sleep it. What I've seen there is, and this is quite recent, my ventures there more than a week ago, I was able to tour those facilities. First of all, I might say that there are not a lot of people in there. It's not the numbers that we saw in the first 24 hours of recreational. There were a total of 20 people amongst 5 different dispensaries. So it wasn't like people were fighting each other to get there. It was very relaxed, very casual, nothing unusual from any other retail trade. And I was surprised by that, to be honest with you. So the numbers have gone down. The green rush, perhaps in that environment, has lessened to a point of just normal bodies doing normal business. So I think that we need to keep that in perspective when we're deciding upon anything, is that while it may seem overtly unusual at first, things begin to relax and people get into a status quo. I'm sure the first liquor stores were exactly like that after the fall of Prohibition. I don't think there's any doubt that this process is going forward, and it will move forward because of the hard work and effort of a lot of people involved. But I think a realistic approach, it's not, the value is really not too large, much larger than any other, given a jewelry store, for example, in the same amount of space would have equivalent value 25, 50 times more valuable than what we're talking about in equivalent amounts. Yes, there is inherent crime, there are inherent risks. However, good, smart security policies and practices can mitigate a lot of that. Denying access to facilities. Perhaps this special use permit, we're talking about two locations in Sparks. So we're not talking about something that we have to apply across 50 different applicants, 50 different businesses. So perhaps our method of control and management of those regulations, of those facilities should be dependent solely upon their ability to function in whatever it may be. So thank you.
My name is Terrell Ferrand. I'm the Director of Operations for Martin Ross and Associates. I have a law enforcement background and I have a security background over the last 50 years. Bottom line is 40-something years anyway. Whether we agree or disagree with it, it's now a moot point, and my whole process here is to get in, and my reason for getting involved is to make sure that if this process is going to go on, that it be done logically, that it be done not helter-skelter or willy-nilly. Let's put a lot of thought in this, and I know everyone has, and let's do it the right way. I don't think necessarily Colorado's done it the right way. In fact, I have some real concerns about their issues. But Arizona and not all of California has done everything the right way, and California likes to think they do everything the right way. The bottom line is that let's use what we know, and let's try to make the most secure and safe environment that we can for not only the people that are doing the business, that are in the retail business, but especially for our community. And that includes our kids, and that includes the adults, and that includes whoever. I know, and Councilman Kerrigan, I understand that your concern is, okay, we've gone from 500 to 1,000 feet, and now somebody's asking for 1,500 feet. Well, where's the end? Is the end 5 miles? Is the end 10 miles? You know what? We get into the miles, now we have to start thinking about another thing. That's something else. But from a reasonable standpoint, let's take a look at the location, and if law enforcement doesn't have any heartburn with it, and it's a secure, safe location, and it's out of public view, or it doesn't create additional hazards or impedance with the community or traffic, then if it makes sense, why not allow it? Why not do it? And whether that's through a special use permit or whether that's extending it to 1,500 feet, and I don't know where the 1,000-foot or the 500-foot rule came from, or the 1,000-foot rule, or why it had to be a rule for that. But go ahead, I'm sorry. Did you have something? Okay. My point being is that from Martin Ross' standpoint, we decided to get involved because we want to make sure that if these companies are going to come in here and do this, somebody should have some oversight from security and safety standpoint and make sure that this is done from a good common sense standpoint. And I know one person's common sense is not always somebody else's. But, my God, let's use the common sense that we do have, and let's use the experience that we've got out here, and let's do this thing the right way. And I think that building, that one building that we're talking about over on 21st is phenomenal. I've been involved with the process and with the architectural design, and I think I don't think we could have a better location, both from a parking standpoint and from a safety and security standpoint.
Thank you. Do you have a question, Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, and your proposal is to do away with feet or miles or distance, but to allow the police chief to say if it's safe or not. Is that your proposal?
That is more or less. Again, we're talking about two locations. I think it's important to pick the property, the location that's best for it when all factors have been considered, of course, during the application. So whether or not, I don't know where the 500-foot or 1,000, I don't know what's dependent in making that determination. So what I do know is that if there is a good piece of property to engage in whatever type of business, whether it's a lawn, nursery, garden center, something like that, hey, that's a perfect place. Let's do it. I think the most important emphasis should be on determining whether or not it is, in fact, the perfect place to do it, the perfect location, the perfect building, the perfect. I do want to point out one thing, is that this particular area is not a heavily walked path. It is a drive-to area, as a lot of other industrial parks or areas are. So there isn't a lot of pedestrian traffic to begin with. Yes, there are probably bus stops, and yes, those bus stop visitations might increase to a certain extent. Yes, there will be a green rush, and there will be a lot of people visiting this. Hope we have enough parking. But that will die down. And those numbers will trickle down to a normal retail number, as everything else has in every other state that has initiated this.
So I guess my question, to get back to what your proposal is, that if the police chief said 500 feet should be the appropriate footage, that would be agreeable, that the police chief said that is what he wants for security. Is that right?
It would be depending on what the purpose was for the 500 feet. Why would the police chief make an arbitrary figure of 500 feet unless there was a school or something like that was an issue?
So it's not the footage that you're worried about. It's the police chief has to say the building is good or bad.
If they are the person that's determining whether or not that is indeed the case, then absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else under public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for action. Questions? Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I've been, I think the council knows how I feel about this thing, and might be surprised at how I'm going to address this today. And the reason being is in my last couple of months, I've had an opportunity to take a look at some things that are going on in Carson City. Everything we're talking about today, making decisions on, is going to be out the window in about 90 days. You know, once legislation starts back up in February, there's already legislation being introduced to expand this stuff to great degrees, taking the word medical out of it and allowing recreational use of marijuana. We've got a whole bunch of issues to have to deal with that we don't even know what's coming down the pipeline yet. And I think staff might even be surprised on some of the things that are going on out there. I think the best thing for us is to move forward, get this thing done. I'm going to be opposed to the special use permits because I think we need to get the two businesses up and running and get that over with so we can start dealing with the issues that we're going to need to be dealing with in the fallout on this thing and be preparing for the next step for the state legislation and what's going on. So, you know, I will support going forward. I won't support if we have to go through the special use permit process on this. I think it needs to be done and done quickly. And, you know, the state's saying who the two people are we get, that's who we get. We find their properties in the allowable 500. Planning Commission went to 1,000. And I think we're going down a really bad path that everybody comes up, we got a building here and wants to move it forward. That's slippery slope, I think is the term that is used. That's not good planning. That's not a good process. And so I will support that elimination of the special use permit.
Ms. Reddy?
Well, I'd like to advocate for keeping the special use permit in, of course, because I do believe that the public participation is of value, and I think that we do learn things from the public participation that makes it a better outcome for the neighbors. I believe in response to Ms. Gaska's testimony that part of the reason we want to move forward with the special use permit, and I do understand what you're saying about the use of staff time, is that I think the businesses would like to see their ability to open the door as soon as possible. And so if you don't, if you allow choice, so you give it up to the businesses, they can choose to go through it, they can choose not to go through it, because the state doesn't require it. But knowing that a special use permit can take some time, if you've gone through it before the process, once you are successful in achieving your state license, you're on track to open. And so for some businesses, that $10,000 of investment up front to be able to open earlier, if they win the golden candy bar, for lack of a better description, the golden ticket, that gets their doors open 2 to 3 months earlier. So I think that's why I would like it to be the choice of the business, whether or not they want to choose to invest in it. And the staff time gets compensated at $120 an hour for that $10,000 fee. So we're making sure that that's not impacting the city's budget by doing it that way. And again, I really believe that the neighbors should have the opportunity I heard the police chief say that he's reconsidered and that he thinks that the special use permit gives law enforcement the time to look at it. And then the last thing is, I think that somebody needs to explain why we came up with 500 feet, why we came up with 1,000 feet, so that we can have some clarity around that standard.
Mr. Kerrigan.
No, go ahead, Armando.
Sorry.
You want to answer the question?
Staff's starting point with regard to zoning for the dispensaries was initially that it should only be in the commercial districts and not in the industrial area. The premise was that as the retail outlets, they should be as accessible to the population of the city of Sparks. You know, we weren't necessarily thinking tourists or visitors or Reno residents. Our thinking was these are dispensaries in Sparks to serve Sparks residents, and so they should be located ideally, you know, convenient to the population of the city of Sparks. So we started off with the idea that it would be located in the C2 zoning district, potentially in the TOD. You know, the planned developments, you know, they might very well be appropriate there, except that, you know, we can't affect their zoning through changes to the zoning code. So as we looked at that, as we looked at the map, the working maps that we had with regard to, you know, all the browned out areas based on community facility, location of community facilities and the location of schools, it became apparent that there weren't necessarily, you know, a lot of options in terms of potential sites in the C2 zoning district in particular. So, and we knew that there was, frankly, that there was interest in the industrial area. So we then started to look at the industrial area. We went out and drove the industrial area. And our concern about the industrial area with regard to dispensaries was that because these were locations that the public would be coming to, we didn't want them buried in the deeper parts of the industrial area. So we looked at the major intersections along basically the Rock and McCarran quarters, and we ultimately came up with 3 intersections that had some potential locations. We started at 500 feet. We did get the feedback, you know, asking us to consider something more. A planner and someone from the police department went out. Sergeant Walsh from the police department went out and drove those intersections. We looked at what was within 500 versus 1,000 feet of each of those intersections. We left the the proposed criterion in place that they be visible from the arterial, so that the police department, that the front. I'm sorry, but specifically that the front door of the proposed establishment be visible from the arterial, so that the police department could patrol those areas without having to get out or drive off of the arterial. And that's where the criteria came from. You know, if you start to look at 1,500 feet, you're going to include properties that aren't visible, that aren't, you know, potentially aren't fronting the arterial, that are more buried, that are, you know, maybe there's a location that is further from that center point of that intersection that works, but you're also going to include properties that potentially don't work very well and which we would have a lot of concerns about. So that's the background on those intersections, the distances, and that's how we got to where we are today. Perhaps Chief Allen wants to add on to that, but that's how we got to the 1,000 feet from those 3 particular intersections.
No, Armando says pretty much, we don't want dispensaries, a retail business, buried deep within an industrial area where it's harder and more difficult for us to patrol on a regular basis, sticking to those main arterials in those key locations so that we have more presence with the limited resources that we have as a key in our discussions.
Thanks.
Okay, anything else? Mr. Kerrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. I was tossed up with the special use permit. I agreed with Julia about public process, but I wanted to make it business friendly. But since the police chief changed his mind and said special use permit, then you sold me. Now, getting on to 1,000 feet, we moved it from 500 to 1,000, and the police department bought off on that. Is there any reason we can't say 1,000 feet or at the discretion of the chief of police? In case somebody comes in outside of that. Hey, I'm going to put you on. No. Because if there is something that's like 1,150 feet away that looks like the police department could buy off on, is there any reason we couldn't put that in our ordinance?
I actually...
Yes, Chief, I didn't give you a choice on that.
Yeah, I
noticed.
The potato's coming your way. What's that?
Councilman Kerrigan, I think from the perspective of writing a zoning ordinance, it's probably a little nebulous, but I'm not saying that it can't be done. Certainly, I think we'd want to confer with the city attorney's office as to whether, drafting the
Well,
distance.
let's confer. Chat, what do you think?
I don't care how far you put these distance requirements at. Whatever distance requirement you put down, you'd better be able to defend it. Because I'm sitting here listening to a lot of different things that could be charged as being arbitrary, capricious, willy-nilly. That's a pretty good legal term.
That's my legal term.
And it's causing me some concern. Now, I appreciate the concern of the police department that we have to be able to look at these establishments from a distance. But I can see a court coming back in and saying, well, are there any other businesses that you have to actually drive up to that you can't see from a convenient location? That's our job. We look at things like this. We drive around to the back of warehouses. We look for suspicious activity at those locations that are not readily seen from a convenient location. And the accolades have been given to staff over how hard they've worked on it. I have not worked that hard on it. I haven't really done much of anything because of the Supreme Court rules and the rules of professional conduct, and I don't want to lose my law license. Nevertheless, I'm listening to this as an attorney, and you're dealing with an industry that's going to have a lot of money. A lot of money buys pretty high-powered lawyers. And my concern here is that whatever we pass, that it's going to be legally defensible in court. And it's already on the record. We've gone from 500 feet to 1,000 feet. We're being asked to look at 1,500 feet, which is all well and good if you can come up with a legally justifiable reason for setting those distance requirements. Churches, schools, those kinds of things, those are traditional. I don't have a problem with that. But to prevent a business from coming into the city of Sparks simply because it may be a little more difficult for us to see and thereby enforce the law it doesn't sound to me as though it's going to pass muster in a federal court and a federal court judge who really could care less how hard our police department has to work or what our city council wants to do. So that's just my 2 cents worth. You asked me, and there it is.
Okay.
Well, that didn't help. Thank you.
Anything else, Mike?
No.
Mr. Lawson.
You got his 2 cents worth, and you got a cent and a half change.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm still not sold on the special use permit. The distance, when it was explained to me in my meeting with the police department, was 500 feet for a reason, because it was faster access. You guys could go by there quicker. If there was a call, it's on a major artery, whatever. That too.
Street.
We've been here too long, Mayor. It's
Yeah.
been since 10 o'clock this morning we've been going at it. But to me, all that makes sense, and it's perfect. So I'm not really obliged to moving it even to the 1,000 feet. I'd have to have a pretty compelling reason for that. But the one that's got me is I just can't agree with doing the SUP. And I know you get to change your mind, but I'm not changing my mind on this particular part.
Okay, who else?
One of the operating hours? And I'm good with the operating hours and the going to 7 instead of 6. Is that, once again, your recommendation was 6 from the police department. After further review, 7, it works for everybody.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, anything else? Questions? Somebody want to try a motion? Somebody want to try to direct staff to come back with some changes? Mr. Lawson. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Schmitz first.
Is that an option today, to direct you to come back with some changes that address the council's concern, and I think more importantly, Mr. Adams' concern?
Well, certainly if the will of the city council is not to subject the dispensaries to a special use permit process, we would be needing to amend the code that we passed last month for the administrative review process to make it applicable to dispensaries, if that's in fact the direction that you wanted to provide to us.
No matter where it goes.
Yeah.
Well, it is, we don't have 3 votes here, according to the statements from each council, to do something, so I don't want to sit down and put words in people's mouths, but I'm trying to find an easy way or a way to go ahead and move this thing forward. So a couple options that I see. That's all right, I'll give them time.
Armando, you want to take a quick recess and discuss this, or can you? Okay.
Well, Martina, if you wouldn't mind, we'd like to take 5 to 10 minutes at the
Can I
most.
just have one, if you can get, if you know the answer before you go to recess, help me out here a little bit, is when do we expect the first decision from the state on any of our applicants?
I'm not aware of the timetable for that. They have to publish notice 45 days before they open the 10-day period. They haven't published notice, so I would say, we're at least 45 days away.
So when do they open up ours, or, they allow applicants from the north to be, I know they've already taken applicants from the south, when are they going to allow them from the north? They don't have a time frame yet?
No,
The county's taking it.
The state will have that 10-day application period that Ms. Melby referred to. They have to, per their regs and per the state law, they have to notify the public at least 45 days before they open that 10-day period. So we're at least 45 days out from that 10-day period.
So we're at least 2 months from something happening. Okay, thank you.
Let's do this. It's okay with the attorney. Can we adjourn to our closed door session to come back and do 6.7 while they're doing this? Then we can come back and take action on 8.1 and 6.7.
Absolutely.
Okay. So can I have a motion to adjourn for closed door session?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Moved by Councilman Kerrigan, seconded by Schmidt. All in favor? Aye. Okay. So we'll go, Steve, can we just go across the hall over here to this? Okay, we'll go across the hall over here. There's a room over here we can go for closed door session. the meeting back to order, please. Armando, let's finish up on 6.7, and then we'll get back to you guys, okay? Let's move to 6.7, consideration of possible approval of a settlement. Chet, did you want to say anything, or do we just need a motion?
Unless you have any further questions of me, there was no deliberation conducted while we were in closed session, and I simply presented attorney-client information to the City Council. Unless you have any other questions of me, you can certainly move on that agenda item.
Any questions?
The information.
Mr. Kerrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. If there's no question, I move to approve the settlement of all claims presented by Ms. Terry Kaiser Cooper Esquire for a total amount of $49,999.
Do you have a second? Ms. Ratty.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Kerrigan, seconded by Councilwoman Ratty to settle 6.7. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously. Okay, let's go back to 8.1. Armando.
Mayor Martini, members of the City Council, Armando Ornelas, City Planner. What we wanted to clarify and what we had some confusion on our part on as staff was whether or not we would need to go back and amend the other sections of the code if you wanted to require only administrative review as opposed to the special use permit process. And what we determined was that, in fact, if the council wants this evening to change this so it's subject to an AR and not a special use permit, all of the changes that would need to be made are in this particular ordinance, and so you could accomplish that this evening if you wanted to.
Okay. Okay, questions? Anybody want to make a motion? Mr. Lawson. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you repeat that exactly what you said again? Make sure I didn't misunderstand what you said.
Councilman Schmidt, I think Councilman Kerrigan had asked about whether there was, or perhaps it was you, I'm sorry, whether there was direction that might be given to staff in terms of coming back with something. And the specific thing that we were looking at was whether or not we needed to amend other sections of the code. In other words, the work we did on to allow or to require the administrative review for the other types of medical marijuana establishments to make it applicable to special use permits. But we would not have to amend any other section of code. You could do that all by changing some of the provisions in this ordinance that's before you tonight. And so if the desire is not to subject the dispensary to a special use permit process, all of that can be done in this ordinance, and therefore you could do it all of that this evening if you wanted to.
So we just do a motion then to accept it as written, except for removal of the special use permit process, right?
Correct. That and the change in I, we're striking the word standalone.
And I guess my concern was that if we do that, my gut tells me that that motion's going to, that vote's going to die for lack of a positive 3 votes. So what is our solution that we can do? And I'm willing to make that motion.
Well, I think there's other changes that have been discussed in terms of the distances, et cetera. Yeah. But the primary issue that there seems to be a lack of agreement on is whether or not to require dispensaries to go through the special use permit process. And I don't know that staff has a recommendation for council on that point, because it's either you do or you don't.
So the best thing to do is just make a motion, let it die, and then we'll figure out what to do from there. I'll make a motion, we accept it, staff report is outlined, except for removing the special use permit requirement and changing the minor wording that was brought forward for I think was.
Do you have a second?
Are we going to address the operating hours, distance, and also, or that moot at this point?
Yeah, I think that's coming up at a later time.
I'll second it for discussion.
Moved by Councilman Schmidt, seconded by Councilman Lawson to approve with the changes. Discussion, Mr. Kerrigan.
Okay, so what about the distance?
Yeah, there we go.
No, I'm asking everybody on the city council.
Good, Jerry.
So I thought what our city attorney threw in at the last minute there was interesting, about looking at 500, 1,000, and 1,500 and that being troublesome. But I think that perhaps the more defensible item can be seen from the arterial. Because if you can be seen from the arterial at 300 or 500 or 750, it's a visibility issue for our police. So my question is does that make sense to you as being a more legally defensible, these three arterials and visible from those arterials? I'm sorry, these three intersections and visible from those arterials.
Perhaps we could hear from the police chief, and he could make a record as to why it is appropriate to do it this way.
The main focus from the police department's perspective is access, ease of access, and the ability to respond in a quick manner. That is why those restrictions were placed into the code at our request, is to have a retail location buried deep within with an emergency response. It's going to take us time and energy to get down to that location. And if it's on one of those main arterials, we'll have a quicker, faster response to any type of issues that may occur, especially with the limitations of having a retail business in an industrial area in the first place that we are requiring to close at 7 o'clock. As the evening progresses into the night, most of our resources are drawn back into the main portion of the city, where we're dealing with domestics, we're dealing with runaways, we're dealing with other types of incidences, and our presence isn't as strong in that area to monitor and watch those businesses that are now going to be closed during those hours. So having that access where we can get to a quick access, do a quick drive-by look at, and have that availability is the justification behind the main arterial language.
And so does a view from arterial still get you there? Or is that farther than you want to be? I mean, it's one of your conditions now.
It's one of them, and that's when we went from 500 to 1,000 feet. It wasn't as big as a concern for me, is because it still had that requirement of being visible from the main arterial. It wasn't back onto a side street where you now have to deviate what would be, just a drive-by, even course of conduct, or people are going from one call to another, but they're still on those main streets with a presence. Once you get off those main streets, those are when we're not going to have the presence that I would prefer to have in these cases.
And 1,500, so the 500 feet between 1,000 and...
That's why it didn't really, the distance, when we looked at the maps and we looked at the properties that were going to be affected between 500 and 1,000, with the language of there that still had to be visible from the main arterial, didn't affect and didn't change too many of those requirements or what we needed for our response.
So to say it back, 1,000 feet plus view.
Right, but
view
even
from
going,
arterial.
even going to 1,500 feet would not address the issue that came before you earlier today. It is not visible from a main arterial.
Right. And so what's in the one that's being in the motion now is just leaving it at 1,000 as recommended by the Planning Commission? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kerrigan.
Yes, thank you. That would be the first question. And then the second question is, are we willing to hold this up because of the special use permit?
I will only speak for myself, but I am.
Me too.
Okay.
So it's going to be held up one way or another. It doesn't make any difference.
No, but one of us could change our vote and go the other way.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Certainly mine.
Yeah, I couldn't I? Well, what about the police chief? You want to change your mind about the special use permit since you changed my mind?
If I had my preference, I like the language of having the special use permit in there because it does bring up the community involvement, and someone might bring up an issue that we might not know that is an issue to surrounding neighbors. If we don't have it, I'm pretty confident in the fact that your city staff will make it work to the best of our abilities. With that being said, I would prefer it, but I wouldn't say, stomp my feet up and down, I got to have it type thing. We can make it work if we have to. Armando can argue or not with that if you'd like.
No, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The motion actually was special use permit. It was reviewing special use permit, but the motion didn't actually put administrative review back in. So do we need to put, if you go down that path, do you need to put administrative review?
You would need to substitute, or we would recommend that you substitute administrative review for special.
That
use
wasn't
permit.
clear. All we did was pull the special.
Well, there's a couple things, too. I think that we need we change, the time needs to be changed also to 7 o'clock versus 6 o'clock.
I think the version we brought to you, Councilman Kerrigan, has been
Does that have
changed.
7 o'clock
Yes.
in it? Okay.
It has the 7 o'clock and the 1,000 feet, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Schmidt?
I would be willing to go add in the administrative review. I'm sorry I didn't put that in there.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I didn't catch it when you brought it.
So, then we have a motion with the changes being the administrative review versus special use permit. Does everyone understand that part?
Yes, sir.
And the distance remains the same, 1,000 feet? Everybody okay with that? The time has already been changed to 7 o'clock. Was there anything else that we needed in there?
Again, just that, and I think Councilman Schmidt's motion already included was the change in I. Yeah.
Standalone.
Standalone, okay. All right, everyone understand the motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. So it goes 2-2, it does not pass. Okay.
No, we can try another
Another
motion.
motion, yeah. Anybody want to try another motion? Ms. Reddy?
So I'll make the same motion that includes the 1,000 feet and the 7 o'clock time that's already in this written, the standalone, but doesn't touch the special use permit.
Do you have a second?
It doesn't what now?
Doesn't touch the special use permit, it stays as written, so the special use permit
So you're
stays in.
saying that you're going to, your motion is to go with the staff recommendation that came before us, correct?
Minus, I think at this point, the only change is the standalone language.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Ratty, seconded by Mr. Kerrigan. Everyone understand the motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. 2-2.
Nobody wants to change.
I don't was right about that, wasn't I?
Ms. Ratty, yeah, exactly.
Yep, so I just need help with process, so it's a second reading. So do we have to wait 30 days? Is that what you're saying, to consider it again?
I don't think so.
I don't either.
No, you have to have a time period between the first and second, but if the second doesn't pass, and
Well, let's just put it this way, at our next city council meeting, if we have all of us here, it will be broken.
If we have all of us here, yeah, that's true. You know, unfortunate here, we're trying to get this moved forward and get this process going. We got people that want to apply and go on, and we can't, somebody can't break a goddamn vote. I don't get it. I mean, I wish I could, I would do it. And I don't care which way, I would do it either way just to get this moving forward. I mean, it's ridiculous, but, so we put this on for next meeting?
Now, let's go, yeah, maybe I'm wishy-washy on it.
No. If there's one thing that you were not, you're not wishy-washy.
You know what, honestly, to be honest with you, I would love to have the public process, but if we're going to hold this thing up because of that, and it's going through the state and going through the city, I don't have a problem with it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah. I just wish there was a way that, we can, to solve a problem on having some public input. But,
Mr. Schmidt?
I really don't.
Is it possible under adding administrative review that notices be sent? That we do administrative review with notices sent on out to the public that has time to do written comments back to staff?
Well, we'd have to amend the administrative review ordinance, or that section of code. It currently does not require that. We'd have to also either differentiate, in that section of code between this use and all other uses, because it's not the only use that, is covered by, or, entitled by administrative review, so.
Just thought I'd throw something out.
No, we can't rewrite it into this one. This is a special ordinance for just medical marijuana dispensing, right? Can we not put in there that if it's an administrative review, we have to notify people within 700 feet?
Well, I think you get into an equal protection argument there, Mike.
Get into what?
An equal protection argument. Unless you amend the administrative review ordinance.
And again, I personally think that's the worst-case scenario, because you're notifying people, but then you're not giving them a forum to actually make a difference. So as much as I would really like to see a special use permit, I'd rather, if that's where you all ended up, that you not do the public notification, because it's a farce. You don't really have, you get notified, but you don't get the opportunity to have any input or do anything about it.
Yeah, but you do get a chance to have public input. You get to call your councilman and send him an email and tell him you don't like this or you do.
Right, but the review's done at the staff level. That's the whole point.
Do you have a question, Mr. Barrett?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Chris Barrett, for your record. If I could make a suggestion here to help you this along. When people are going through the dispensary review with your staff, it's extensive, it's ongoing, and you see the fire department, you see the police department, you see planning, you see business. This isn't just a retail operation that's getting reviewed. It is very extensive. In that application, both at the state level and at your level, those people who are going to get that license, they have their phone numbers, they have all the contact information, and they're going to be responsible business people to respond to this council and to the councilman in that district. And if there is a problem, the worst thing that a responsible business person wants to be is a bad neighbor. So if there is a problem, in my experience, I've been in front of this council before, those business people are contacted by the manager's office, by the mayor or the council person, and that business person responds appropriately to fix a problem. So if a problem does arise, the responsible way is contact the business owner and say, look, we got a problem, let's get together and get this thing fixed. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Well, if we can't settle this tonight, then the only option is to move this to the next meeting when we have 5 people and have someone break the tie. I don't know how else to, any suggestions, Mr. Driscoll?
I would have to defer to legal counsel, since this is part of a two-step process, whether it could be tabled for action at the next meeting, or does it have to start over? So I'd just seek that counsel.
That's a good call. That's a good call. You could always
So we could table it because we had no action, really, have we?
You could table it. No, there has been no action taken.
Okay.
Can we make the motion again?
You can certainly do that. It's part of the legislative process.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Uh-oh.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I'll put you on speaker.
No, this could solve it right now.
Yeah, I've got you on speaker.
I was wondering if I can call in and vote on this issue.
Is Colin, is he able to vote on this issue, Mr.?
Is Ms. Clerk going to mark him present for this particular agenda item?
I would imagine if he came to the meeting, we would mark him present.
Yeah, he was late, but he finally got here.
I'm sorry. Yes, I would consider him late but present.
So are we good to go? Can we do this or not?
Sure.
Okay. So we're looking for a motion then from someone, either way, and we'll see how this works out. Are you there, Mr. Smith? Ron, are you there?
I'm here.
He's there. Okay, go ahead. Mr. Lawson.
Yes, I'm here.
I'm going to make a motion, Ron, I hope you can hear me. Is we are making a motion to remove the special use requirement from the, forgot what, 7.1? Or 8.1? 8.1, and replace that with an administrative review. The distances are staying the same, and the hours of operation, and we've added the word standalone. We've removed the word standalone.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Smith. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Lawson, a second by Mr. Smith. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
So it passes 3-2. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. All right, thank you. That's the end of 8.1. Does staff understand? We're all carried away? Okay, good. All right, let's move on to comments from the public. Anyone under public comments? Thanks, Ron. Any comments from the city council or city manager?
He can't leave, we have a redevelopment, don't leave. Where's he going?
Mr. Driscoll, comments from the city council manager. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have an announcement. Terms will expire on the following committees on June 30th, 2014. Civil Service Commission, 2 members serving 3-year terms. Parks and Recreation Commission, 3 members serving 3-year terms. Persons interested in serving on any of these committees should complete a community service application available from the city clerk's office. You may also apply online at the city's website, www.cityofsparks.us. Click on City Services on the webpage, then click on Volunteering, Get Involved, then click on Fill Out City of Sparks Volunteer Application. Applications will be accepted until the close of business on May 30th, 2014. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Julia? Okay, any other comments from the city council or city manager? Okay, seeing no further business, we are adjourned.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Sparks Redevelopment Agency for May 27th, 2014 with a roll call.
Chairman Smith, absent. Agency members ready?
Here.
Lawson?
Here.
Martini?
Here.
Kerrigan?
Here.
Schmidt?
Here.
Agency Attorney Adams?
Here.
And Agency Manager Driscoll.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Do you have any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll look for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Lawson, seconded by Mayor Martini. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Can I get approval of the minutes of April 28th, 2014?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Lawson, seconded by Mayor Martini. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Report of claims and bills approved for payment and appropriation transfers for the period of April 10th, 2014 through May 7th, 2014.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Lawson, seconded by Mayor Martini. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Number 5, the budget. Mr. Cronk.
For the record, Jeff Cronk, Chief Financial Officer for the agency. I have before you the final budgets for redevelopment agency areas 1 and 2. Again, these are identical to the tentative budgets that were filed and what was presented under the public hearing that we had just a week ago. And so today is the vote for the final budget that we'll file with the state after approval.
Councilman Kerrigan.
Thank you. Jeff, this budget does not have a subsidy for redevelopment District 2, does it?
That's correct.
It does not?
It does not. There isn't a subsidy that was built into the budget for fiscal 15 for either Area 1 or 2.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve, Madam Chair.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Martini, seconded by Councilman Kerrigan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Comments from the public? Seeing none. Comments from the agency and Chief Administrative Officer?
Just one comment. Stick around if you need to sign the budget.
Oh, that's right.
Right?
If you need to.
Everybody. Yeah.
We all have to sign it?
Does everybody
Yes.
sign it?
Yes.
All those that approved it.
Actually,
I think everybody's going to sign it, even if we didn't approve it.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
We're out of here.
Third.